Game begin.
Welcome to episode 29 of the Spike Colony podcast. I'm here with my co-host, the Exerciser, Michael J, and the Exorciser of, let's say, bad decks from pre-modern, with one exception, which will never I think the biggest the Gaia's Blessing Stasis mistake is one of the most hilarious giant mistakes that you've ever made, because in many senses it's one of the only missteps you've made.
But it had a profound impact on my performance.
It's like you've actually made relatively good. I mean, we were talking about decision making last week. You've actually made some pretty sound decisions. And if your friends were to roast you into the ground, they wouldn't have very many things to choose from to just completely annihilate you on. But you just handed it over on a silver platter, so that for multiple years, we're in year 2 now of roasting you for Gaia's Blessing Stasis. But I think I think we should just call that getting your sea legs in pre-modern, because everyone looks at. I think what you did with that deck, you did a classic, look at the card pool and just decide that you like a card in a deck.
I think we can agree on one thing, which is that I don't have very many good qualities. But one of the qualities that I do have that is good is I can laugh at myself when I've legitimately made a mistake. And that was a bad one. Last night, you responded to somebody else who's like, oh, what's Mike's tier list? And you put pretty close to what my tier list would be.
Yeah, I just reverse the positions of.
You're getting kicked out of Non-Idiots for this. The 3 best decks of pre-modern are clearly blue-green Stasis, red-white Rifter, and classic Parallax.
Yeah, Squee Replenish.
Yeah, Squee Plenish is the third best. But yeah, it was pretty close. I think I would have. I think Land Still is better than Oath Peluche, but I did want to recognize Magical Christmas Land Death, which is I think a pretty good deck.
All right,
it's better than Oath.
We already have too many things to talk about. Land Still sucks, man. Land Still is great. It sucks. Nobody it sucks by the numbers too, which is my favorite part. Yep. It's not really showing up to tournaments. So it just sucks. It's just
okay. Well, let's say everybody who's bad. I'm just gonna make this up. Everybody who's bad. I don't know how you want to count them as bad, but those people all chose to play blue-white Stifle Knot, right? And nobody who's good except Dave Kaplan. He's the only one, right?
Yeah. I understand. I'm just gonna stop you right there.
The numbers would look bad for blue-white Stifle Knot.
I'm gonna stop you right there and just be there's a reason why good players are avoiding playing Landstill right now. It's because they would like to top their events. That's just all I'm saying.
But last spring, David Daniel and Tom Metelsky and myself.
Last spring is an eternity ago.
Brian Selden shat on everybody with and then Land came out with the best version, obviously hybridizing the David Daniel and Brian Selden ideas, but even Fran is just that was ingenious, right? And I was listening to the Rich Shea podcast interview on All Things Considered. This was I can't beat this, that Land put into Land Still. I feel I don't know. I feel you have at least as big a blind spot to Land Still's benefits as I do to Oath Peluche's.
I am confident in saying that Land Still is just I am no longer joking. I never was joking when I say it's Blue White the Rock. It's Blue White the Rock. Anything you have to say about the Rock, be it good or bad, you can say it about Land Still, because it's just it's just the same deck. You roll up and you're just oh, I'm gonna have all the solutions for all the problems. I'm going to sequence my cards. I'm gonna draw some cards. I'm gonna cast a big decree of. It's just there's one right now. There's one. So Brian Selden has since left the shores of the Fairy Conclave, which of course he never actually had in his deck. So left the shores,
left the Dust Bowl.
Yeah, he left the Dust Bowl and washed up on the Yavimaya coast. Brian Selden has been piloting Stanley Chen Cyberpunker Madness, a deck which is not land still, and he's had some results. He kind of top 16 the Hartford situation, and he top 2. He got the second place in the monthly. David Daniel, I'm not sure what he's been up to. I know he so one correction, we kept on talking about like the Flint Doomsday Hermit deck, but in actuality David Daniel was kind of the one who figured out the Doomsday adaptation, and then Flint gave it some tweaks and upgrades. And then also we didn't really fully flesh out what happened last week, but what had happened was Mike Arnold had issued a challenge to like 5 or 6 pilots to all play Doomsday in the monthly. And they all played Doomsday in different forms, and 2 or 3 of them made the top cut, which is pretty impressive considering that Doomsday's relevance in the format up until then was close to nothing. So everyone's left the Mistress Factory for greener pastures. There's one
for greener,
remaining,
bluer and blacker pastures.
just every other color. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. They still play blue white. They just don't. They probably just play good blue white decks. There's one remaining Landstill warrior by the name of Jay McCohen out of the Duress crew. Worcester scene carrying on the banner, and this is no. I am impressed. He put up a top 8 finish at the 37 player 1K situation they had last month. They're having another one this month, next week. Go check it out if you're in the area on February 17th. And had to battle through some tough competition. But aside from that, we're results oriented thinkers on this cast, and Lance still hasn't been putting up the results.
Are you trying to trick me into playing Landstill at the bottles? And
look, if you want to prove me wrong by going ahead and doing the rock thing at a tournament, like I'm happy to be proven wrong on results.
Are you playing in the Queens meetup next Sunday?
Oh geez, I can't keep track, but if it's Sunday, almost certainly not, because Sunday is like a combo silks brunch spin activities day with the wife.
The organizer of that event rolls into Bifrost this week, and he's not going to play, right? He's just like rolling into the rest of this meetup. And then we're just being friendly. I don't know him. I'm being friendly with him. And he's just like, oh, I posted. I'm like, oh, you're the one who posted to go to Queens. I'm like, I'll do that one, right? But you're making me go to Queens. And just chat with him. And being nice to him. And then Land goes, he's like, Mike. He's like, yeah. He's like, what's his name? And I'm like, and then Land goes to him and he goes, just like, see what I did there? He's just roasted me.
Oh man. I have not seen Lan in a while. Lan is going, Lan is philandering. Ooh, did you see what I did there? He's philandering with other cabals, other podcasts, allegedly.
He has his own mini Illuminati. Yeah. I found this out. First of all, I hang out with Lan every week in non-magical context, just like because we're friends. And then also, I'm like, oh, are you going to go to this meetup? Blah, blah, blah. But like, Pre-Modern is not the center of our relationship, except for Sacred Torch. We really literally played like 100 hours together because I made him. And then I find I was at a meetup like 2 weeks ago, and these two guys are just like, oh yeah, we were testing at Land's house this week, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what the? It just like starts with the 3 of us were testing at Land's house. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that sounds illegal.
It's me. What? Sounds illegal, right?
Yeah, but well. I guess they're doing it. Okay. I sent my piece.
They want to win the Bottles and Brewery tournament.
Oh, he's maintaining his edge for that.
Yeah. So I guess even tell me they were testing. So
I guess we have to be kind of. I guess we have to be kind of shifty for that, so that they don't get a read. Luckily, I have it on relatively good information that Land does not listen to the Spike Quality podcast.
This is what he did do, though. So I did the Eternal Turtles podcast this week, and I just listed a bunch of people I said nice things about, right? And then I just got like a weird like, huh, or whatever response from Lan, and I'm like, look, Lan, he's just like, I wasn't saying anything. I was just saying, huh. But if you're going to take it this way, I'm just going to badmouth you on ATC this week. What? Like, and then, but the other thing was we were hanging out at Johnny's on Wednesday, and he's just like, what are you playing tomorrow? And I'm like, I don't know. And I gave him a list of the decks that I was going to bring. And I'm like, why do you ask? He's like, no reason.
I'm just going to get you back for leaking Landy Host.
He like literally, I'm like, you can't think that deck's possibly better than Blue White Stifle Dot. He's like, but it beat all three of the decks you said you were going to bring. So that's sweet. So SWB, ATC veteran, meetup champion, and Nashvilleian finisher SWB defeated Lan in a mono blue mirror match in round 3. So Lan was not able to go against me in the finals of the meetup. SWB did instead.
On your way to a 4-0 victory, I guess I have to show up to these things to put up some resistance.
4-0 with an asterisk. I beat Ryan Fisher, and then I realized I cheated.
Oh, nice.
So I beat him. It was a good match. It was a really good match. He's elves, Ryan Fisher, top 8 at Sacred Torch. I beat him, and then it was like kind of an improbable win. And then I was describing the win to Luis Not Vargas, and then I realized when I was describing the win out loud that I had made an illegal play. So I'm like, we still had 20 minutes on the clock, and I was just like, Ryan, I just want to replay game 3, and he's just like, we don't have to, and I'm like, oh, just play. And so he beat me in the rerun, but chose to give me the win. So because he's like, if it was a real tournament, you would have already won. And also, I didn't cheat in a way that I would have lost, right? Like I still could have won, right? It's just I felt bad about it. So what happened was I set up a Doomsday pile to win the game on the next turn. He ripped and played Tormod's Crypt. So what I did was I drew Vision Charm to Vision Charm as Tormod's Crypt, and I happened to have Crows and Reclamation in my hand, and I just put the Vision Charm back on top of my deck because that's all you ever do with the Crows and Reclamation is put it, yeah, and I didn't think about the fact that I was supposed to shuffle my deck, and I just and so you only ever use Crows and Reclamation on an empty library in this.
Yeah. So basically, you're saying you would have drawn over the next 5 turns some Dreadnoughts and stuff
I could
in
have
order,
just
and
Vision
then
Charm Dreadnoughted him, right? Like he was at nothing, and so but like I set it up for kill the next turn, and he's like, oh, okay, you got me then, right? And then but then I didn't technically have him. That was the thing, so I felt really bad about it.
Yeah, this is like a story that's actually not the first time that people have failed to like read or understand Crows and Reclamation in the format. Like I've actually heard this happen on like another podcast. Like I don't know exactly what situation, but just like players just being like, I don't actually know what Crows and Reclamation does. I'm just gonna put the card into my hand. Or
obviously,
whatever.
My Crows and Reclamation is Japanese, so I didn't read it. But I know what it does. But that's why when I was telling the story,
it's just regrowth. It's even better. No. Oh well, it's because they printed that Phyrexian Mana spell. That's probably like why some players are confused.
As soon as I was telling this story, I realized I cheated. Yeah. Right. So that's the thing. So I was just like, it's like, oh shoot. Cause but in this deck, you only ever Crows and Reclamation with an empty library. It's the thing. So it's just supernatural to just stick the card.
Yeah. I mean, you still have to choose two identical cards when you do that though, which is actually kind of interesting. So scrolling back, we're talking about the classic 4-rounder meetup at Bifrost, the sort of flagship meetup of the meetup circuit that is fast developing in New York City. Shout out to the new friend who Mike doesn't remember the name of, who is bringing a brewery meetup to Queens. So we now have brewery meetup in Queens, brewery meetup in Brooklyn, store meetup in Brooklyn, and store meetup in Manhattan in our meetup circuit. So things really heating up over here in New York. Mike once again cashing in all his wins in the meetups so that when the chips are down, he can go ahead and balance out with O2 starts.
So at the real tournament in 2 weeks, when I go O2 to start, I'm like, well, but I do well in the meetups.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Only a week has passed, but there's plenty to talk about. I never talked about. I think one of the things that you kind of somewhat alluded to, my analysis of that we didn't really fully flesh out is this green white Enchantress deck, and this will be a nice segue because we'll get to talk about Rich Shay's old blue green Enchantress deck, which I think is just super compelling, super interesting. I'm most of the way through his talk with Mano, so I kind of got the ropes on some of the caveats that he kind of included in.
Pause for a sec. Did Jared win the monthly last month?
Last month, the monthly was won by Gary. He goes by Darkview Online.
Yeah.
But it was Gary playing, at least I think that's his name. Hopefully I got this right. Yeah, so that's Gary Roth on White Weenie, the deck that felled Flint Espidal, Jared Doucette, and others. So super sick run, the Savannah Lions taking home the cup.
Gary must have beaten Jared in the finals then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He beat Jared. Yeah.
Okay, because Rich said that he had lost to Jared in the top 8 or the top 4.
Yeah, he just got burned. He just got.
Yeah, so I mean, just cutting ahead, right? Like, I really want to try Rich's deck, but if I'm going to go Enchantress, one of the main reasons I would go Enchantress is it's absolutely dominating matchup against red, versus Rich's deck is just meat to red, right? Like he has like a sideboard plan of a couple of solitary confinements, but he just gets annihilated in every fair game. So it just seems to me like that's not an incentive for me.
Well, I think Parallax Tide is super sick against red. You're just going to lose game 1 every time and then lose their blasts because your deck is red. Your deck is blue. Well, you can, I guess blasts are super bad for you. You can win the coin flip in game 1 and win on turn 4. So there's that. So, I mean, I wanted to talk about this green-white to blue-green transition that Rich kind of felt, and in a way that hopefully doesn't piss off every green-white Enchantress player. I also hate the green-white Enchantress deck, and you know this about me. And apologies to Cam Fulton.
I respect the green-white Enchantress deck because it always beats me.
Yeah, it just beats the deck that you play. Classic stuff. I just have so much trouble with this deck that basically, fundamentally, I'm just like, okay, the deck's like really. We probably need to do like a whole episode on this. Like in pre-modern, you only draw 1 card per turn, and that just kind of like defines everything, right? So it's just like the Enchantress deck, basically it intends to break that paradigm. But it looks even worse than Parfait of drawing only 1 card a turn. Like if you just answer the first Enchantress, or your Enchantress opponent just like doesn't have it in their opening hand, or double worse, your Enchantress opponent like mulls to 5 and you're able to answer their Enchantress, like then they're just like not a deck. Like that's
so I think that a thing is that between green white and green blue Enchantress that's different is setting aside like particular matchup advantages or disadvantages. Like I just said, green white is very good against mono red, and green blue seems to be pretty bad against mono red by comparison. Every keepable green blue hand wins on turn 4, right? That's pretty good, right? Like it's a powerful statement to be able to make. It usually wins in overwhelming fashion, in fact, by turn 4. The main fault against it is they can't interact with opponents very well. So every deck that's faster than turn 4 beats them almost every time. That's the downside of it.
Right, which includes beatdown decks, which isn't a great spot to be. Assuming that you've cut the elephant grass from the main deck or the deck entirely, as Rich has done. But yeah, I mean, Rich's gripes with the green-white deck more or less reflect that. I mean, Rich's problem was just like the end game just doesn't attract him. Like I guess I have the same problem, but just on the other side, which is just that the whole point of the white cards is to kind of like be able to play this mid-rangey control prison thing, like when you're not spinning the wheels. Cause like we all agree that's like once you have like two enchantresses in play, you got plenty of mana, you got plenty, whatever. Like you're gonna win the game anyways. But
that was my argument against the green white Enchantress like LobsterCon 2022 when I did commentary on Rich versus Enchantress in the top 4, right? Which is like top 8, maybe top. I think
Enchantress wasn't in the 22 top 8, so it must have been
absolutely was, because it was undefeated in the Swiss, and Rich played against it in the top 8, and me and Mano did coverage of it in the top 8. Yes, and my analysis was the Enchantress deck can never win a game. And Rich is smarter than I am at the Parfait deck, but you look at the Enchantress structure, and it has no way to win. It's literally impossible.
Well, yeah, Enchantress is never like Parfait. It's just been a buy for Parfait since.
Yeah. So no matter how much advantage it has, it can't win, right? So this was a similar situation in PSS last year.
Oh, my apologies to Jordan Goodwin on Enchantress. Yeah, just completely missed that.
So I was watching. So BK got paired against Enchantress with his Black Parfait deck, right? And he had a horrible draw, and he conceded game 2. And I talked to him about him afterwards. He's like so frustrated, right? He ended up winning the match. This matchup is unlosable, right? And I'm like, why did you concede game 2? He's this guy was about 20 cards behind at that point. I'm like, and
it does matter.
Lost. Yeah. Like if you had just like gritted your teeth and looked at the battlefield, and it was like you were not going to lose that game. Like, yes, I understand it sucks to be 20 cards behind. You were going to come back and win. And I like talked about it with him, and he's just like, oh, you're probably right. I'm like, yes, I know I'm right. The deck can't win against Parfait strategies. But that is different now, right? So, maniacs like Cam Fulton and Rich Shea and Sam Black himself, adding Words of Wind make it so that, just battlefield control prison decks basically can't beat Enchantress anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, that, and just like Parfait is just a shell of its former self, and it just kind of.
But even if you were Lantax Parfait, there's no way you could. I don't think you could realistically beat decks that were focused on Words of Wind, right? Like, if you just look at it, you're just like
you're like really. I mean, your entire deck is designed to like cast everything for 1 mana, and you're like a Mox Diamond deck. So if they just like bounce your board, you like replay your board, and you're just good at suppressing Enchantresses because you're a deck that draws a lot of cards. Like, so let's get a couple things. This is a silly hypothetical matchup, but like the
Enchantress,
because it doesn't exist anymore. But like Parfait was really good at suppressing Enchantress. So between Oath of Druids for Shard Phoenix, which is just a clean answer to Argothian Forever, and then like the permanent Enchantress's presence like is not particularly impressive with Parfait, and the fact that Enchantress does need to play out its lands, so the Tax Rack engine more or less provides infinite gas.
So if you have 0 Enchantresses in play, just so you know, 0 Enchantresses, you just go Sylvan Library, Words of Wind. I have a hard time believing Parfait can beat that. If you have a single Enchantress, there's no way they can.
Yeah, but but like, what does Parfait have? Like, if your opponent is established,
I play permanents. You bounce 3 permanents a turn. Is the game we're gonna play? You can't deal with an Enchantress given the structure that I just. I'm just
telling you, it's really easy. Like, this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna by turn 3, you're gonna establish Sylvan Library, Words of Wind, and then you're gonna sink 3 mana into it. I'm like, okay, I'll pick up Mox Diamond, basic plains, and another basic plains. On my upkeep, I'm going to trigger land tax and I'll play a basic plane. Oh, I get to draw a card, by the way. Like, I'm going to play basic plains, play Mox Diamond. I'm going to activate Scroll Rack. I'm going to play another I'm just going to play garbage. Like, I'm just going to play. I'll play Seal Cleansing if you want to keep skipping your draws. I'm not even going to activate. I'll just keep picking it up.
Like I said, if I just have an Enchantress, though, I just don't know how you could win. Like,
but you don't have an Mike, you're wrong. It's good against the Rock, okay? It's good against a deck that can't deploy 3 permanents in a turn. Land Tax was like one of the best decks at deploying multiple permanents in a turn. And you're like, oh, I'm going to get you by never drawing another card and letting you...
No. Like, I'm saying, I think that it's you might be underrating what it can do with just a Sylvan Library. But what I said was, if I have an Enchantress, I don't know how you're going to win. Because I'm going to actually advance at the same time while bouncing.
Yeah. But then you've then you're establishing this by turn 4 optimistically.
Yeah, I have I have a fault space, which is that you have a window to seal me, right? If that's the case,
You
But
have a
if,
fault space in that you're talking about a 3-card combo that your deck doesn't actually put together consistently. And if I have like my deck is like built entirely around resistance, like you
all right,
know,
so
my advancing is like really good. Like
you
I
are
don't
right
think
in that
I don't.
this is a silly
Do
argument.
you remember when land tax players were drawing 6 cards a turn, like
Yeah, I
and like
remember
playing
not
multiple
liking any
copies
of
of Mox
them.
Diamond and like enlightened
They were
tutoring for
basically-
exactly the thing they need in the situation,
format toxic?
like.
Yeah, I mean, I watched your top 8 match against against
Parfait has the card Aura of Silence in it if it wants. Like Parfait's never losing to any build of Enchantress ever.
Lanny, I respect your PSS win that you and Rich, the only 2 assholes with land tax decks, made it to the finals. I respect it. Luckily, the card was banned, and maybe I'm overstating the case. I think maybe you're right, and that especially given enough time, you would just assemble whatever cards would be awesome in that situation because it's not like Enchantress is putting a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah, you can't forego. You can't forego. Like you can't spend 3 mana
No,
on your
yeah,
upkeep. Forego all your draws. You know, and then try to like increment it because you still have to pick up 3 permanents.
No, you can't. You can't make it. You can't advance at all, right? So you're right. It's only decks like the Rock or whatever that need to spend
Blue, White,
2
the Rock,
more
yeah,
mana on
yeah.
their
I mean,
on their permanents.
yeah, decks that don't
get
contain
actually hard
like,
locked by this.
yeah, decks that don't contain Mox Diamond, like whatever. Yeah, it's like obviously, and that's the point. It's just like if you go, it actually doesn't work for you to go turn 2 Sylvan, turn 3 Words of Wind because you have to pick up your own permanent, so you can't play. So you have to go turn 1 Exploration, Land, Wild Growth, turn 2.
It only works if you have Exploration or Wild Growth.
Yeah,
If you have Exploration or Wild Growth, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
In a lot of matchups.
Yeah, I think it's solid. I think it's impressive because it creates a sub combo that if your opponent is able to draw up some resistance, it's a good sub combo. It also validates having words in your deck because one of the big things that it solves is that words is a endpoint. For if you're just a combo Enchantress deck like Rich's is, and you have words in your deck, you mostly use words as an endpoint, but if you can use it as like a midpoint, like paired with Sylvan Library to kind of bridge you towards your end game, like that gets you more value. So that playing them out isn't that bad. One thing that your opponent can do, of course, is simply suppress your words. And so if they just have, once again, if they have Ray of Revelation anywhere in their deck, they can simply just be like,
There's a strong argument for Words of War in that same spot, though. There's a lot of matchups, and maybe not Parfait.
Well, War is in Rich's deck.
No. What I'm saying is just like Sylvan Library into Words of War. You just like, it's pretty bad for the opponent. You have basically like Ball Lightning.
You have 3 turns
or better every turn. You have Ball Lightning or better, and like if they're like playing out permanents, you just kill them. Like it's kind of insane. And I think there's a lot of matchups where if you went Sylvan Library into Words of Worship, their life would be very difficult if you did nothing else. Like you can't lose because you don't have to draw a card. So if they have no way to destroy the Words of Worship, which would force you to actually draw a card and die, right?
It would be
in the future.
It would be pretty good against the red deck.
Yeah, like you just gain 15 a turn until they run out of cards. Yeah. Like they need to do some kind of stuff for you to not win in that spot.
Yeah.
So
15 outpaces. 15 outpaces. 15 will match up with 4 Grim Lavamancers and 2
at
Curse
some
Scrolls
point, right? So at some point you can easily be doing, let's see, 8, 9, 10, 11. You could probably do 16 a turn in the late game without using any cards. So it might not actually win. Like it actually becomes a race to how quickly you can get to a board position that can deal 16 a turn. So if that's like 4, if you're like 4 Jackal Pups, 4 other guys, and then like a Curse Scroll activation, at the point that you're 16 a turn, it's a question of whether or not your library is thick enough versus their ability to gain only 15 a turn. Yeah. Also, they might be taking a point of damage to gain 15 because in order to get the Words of Worship in play,
they probably tapped a City of Brass.
Yeah, so they might only be gaining 14 a turn, which is going to matter in a situation that I've outlined. I think it's quite interesting. The thing that I just said, because like you're just like, oh wow, that's really bad. I'm like, it might not win.
Yeah, I mean it is functionally very similar to like a circle of protection scenario. But the Enchantress deck can of course just instead of gaining 15 in 2 turn cycles, they can gain +7 and draw +1 card, and then probably be in good shape.
So are we deciding they're terrible people or a terrible deck? It's only one of two things: terrible deck or they're terrible people.
For blue-green Enchantress players?
Right now.
Blue-green Enchantress is a great deck piloted by great people.
Okay, so
because we're talking about Flint, Rich, and Sam Black who've been playing the deck recently. I'm just like, I kind of like all those guys.
Should I? So I built.
Those are my favorite guys, Mike. Like, they're beautiful.
I built Sam's version. Well, I'll give you an example. You and Rich are terrible people for playing land tax decks. Land tax being one of the best decks. So you're only terrible people or terrible decks. That's the divide.
That's the rule.
In order to be a good person, you got to come up. You got to roll in with Growatog or Sly.
Blue green.
You
Blue green ends people's misery. The terrible people, saying the quiet part out loud. The terrible people are the ones who play 12-12. Like that. That's just the truth. It's been the truth.
Lanny, I literally listed to you what decks you're allowed to play and still be a good guy, and it's Growatog and Sly.
I mean, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, because okay, you can still be a good guy. I'm playing 12-12. Yeah, you're not interested in other people's experience. The first time you daze them on their first turn, right? Like, I dazed you on your first turn. You are not a good person anymore. Can't be a good person. Take 12. Take 12 again. Foil.
Gotcha.
Like, I was watching Land play. Land EOT boomeranged a Seal of Removal. I was like, oh, wow, that was pretty cool. I think I know what's going to happen. Then he cast Dreadnought with, Stifle. So he used a Stifle. Again, the card that was bounced with Seal of Removal, right? Then his opponent, which was Derek Keaton, he was borrowing my blue-green deck, played the Seal of Removal that Land had bounced. Land foiled it, right? Plot twist, he had another Seal of Removal. Land gushed and foiled it again. You are not, once you're doing this stuff, you're not the good people.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't be the good people, right? Like, didn't cast any cards for mana. Like, all they did was ruin, like, oh, this is just beyond good, clean fun. Seal of Removal is like the epitome of like a pretty good Magic card. Like,
Unlimited,
it's not overpowered. It's got some synergy. Oh, it's strategically, opportunistically really good against these angles. I'm going to use 8 cards to deal with 2 of them. You're not a good person. Spent 0 mana for that.
Yeah. I mean, let's not forget who our real enemies are, is the Hunger Games quote. So
is it Dave Kaplan?
It is Dave Kaplan, but luckily we've been doing an okay job keeping him out of semifinal matches. Like, that's,
I like Dave Kaplan. I like him a lot.
I like him as a person, but he's the bad guy.
But he's the bad people.
He's just not the good guy in this scenario.
And what about Mike Harris? Mike Harris also.
Mike Harris vacillates. Mike Harris puts on the mask. He's like Punisher, right? He's like the anti-hero because sometimes he just murders people.
And then sometimes he's just like attacking with a 2/2 for 3.
Yeah.
Because somebody disenchanted his survival of the fittest.
Yeah. Sometimes he's just getting in there. But yeah, again, scrolling back to give anybody some context that's super confused. We've talked about the blue-green Enchantress deck on the cast. You should go check out All Things Considered with Rich, where he's breaking down the blue-green Enchantress deck.
As usual, Rich Shea Mano content. It's a banger.
It's banger. It's super interesting. I mean, it's super interesting to hear his journey because I've been at least halfway clued into Sam Black's process with the deck. Sam Black, of course, leaning a little bit harder into Lotus Petals and Worldly Tutors. A real strong believer that, like, if you would mulligan for Argothian Enchantress, then you would Worldly Tutor on 1 for Argothian Enchantress.
I took a lot of test draws with the deck. So I made 3 decks to play in the meetup this week because I thought Osip was going to come. So he asked me to make the Doomsday deck for him. So I had the Doomsday deck built, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll play this Enchantress deck, which seems pretty cool. And then I was like, oh, my fallback deck will be Dead Guy Ale. Because, like, if I look around the room and it's all elves and goblins, there's no way I'm playing Enchantress, right? So Dead Guy Ale has 4 Engineered Plagues in the sideboard. I know how to play it.
Enchantress
right?
has 4 Engineered Plagues in the sideboard in Rich's version.
It sure does now, right? Not even a swamp in the main deck.
Yeah.
Right?
Board in the swamp and the plagues. Yep.
So I brought those, but then Osip couldn't make it, so I just like, I'll play the Doomsday deck myself, and then I loaned out the Enchantress deck. But so I took a lot of test draws with the Enchantress deck, kind of played against myself, figured some stuff out. I think that part of the thing that people have is they're too addicted to gaining a huge advantage with Enchantresses, which is the experience of the green-white Enchantress deck, where just like you have an overwhelming amount
Let's just
of
keep
material.
going. Yeah.
Like, no. This deck, if you get to like...
I watched so many games of Cam, and he just refuses to kill his opponents. Like,
if you get to 5 mana and you have a Cloud of Fairies, like, do the math. Your opponent's probably dead, right? But like, people are like, no, I'm gonna keep drawing cards. No. You cast your Cloud of Fairies, get a minor amount of mana advantage, and you just chip shot them out. Like, and the thing that I think that they're missing about this is that kill. I'm putting kill in quotes because that kill is not going to occur for 20 more turns, right? But like the amount of advantage that you get is very fast to set up if you're focused on it, right? And it doesn't feel very powerful, but it is, I'm going to put infinite in quotes, where infinite is defined by like 4 or 5 permanents, right? Your opponent is probably going to lose if you execute on this axis, but it doesn't feel powerful. That's the thing that I think that people are missing.
I mean, I just think people haven't tried it. Like now that the tech is out there, people who own 3 copies of Serra Sanctum, a $200 card, are going to at least proxy it, put it together, give it a try, and probably start feeling the power. I agree that I guess its fatal flaw is just a turn 4, but it's just got obviously such a impressive turn 4. Allegedly, I mean, I never really thought too much about my fundamental turn when I was testing Sam's version of the deck. But yeah, the way Rich builds, I just like love hearing his thought process where, he's playing, he's tweaking, Rich low key plays. I mean, currently, just because I haven't been playing as much recently as my grindy days, Rich is just always online. He's always playing games and he's always tweaking his decks. And so, key differences, Rich leaned harder on Sanctums. Because he leaned harder on Sanctums, he had this like land that naturally produces extra mana, be it colorless. So extra colorless was good to sink into Frantic Search. It was good to have random Seal of Cleansing in there, just as a use for extra white mana. And he put Trade Roots back in the deck, which Sam had cut, once again as a colorless mana sink. And then
I think that Rich's deck is certainly slower than Sam's deck. When I said that, like, with Blue-Green Enchantress, every keepable hand wins on turn 4, I don't think that that's true of Rich's deck. He only has 1 Worldly Tutor, so that dramatically reduces the frequency of
assembling Enchantress cloud words with 2 clouds and 3. He has more words but fewer clouds, and of course 3 fewer tutors. He has 1 instead of 4, and he has no Lotus Petal. I mean, that's like a big one. It's just like Sam's configuration probably can win on turn 3 if it's just got a God Draw like turn 1 Argothian into
I'm sure you can put one together because of Lotus Petal. It changes the math a lot. But
Lotus Petal changes it, and then Exploration and Wild Growth give you sort of like a huge ceiling.
Well, if you're like first turn Island, Lotus Petal, Argothian, second turn
Forest, Wild Growth, Cloud, and you're off to the races.
Forest. You probably want to do like Forest, Exploration, second land, Wild Growth, Cloud. Then you're like very off to the races on that. Right?
Yeah.
So if you have another enchantment, if you have another Enchantress effect, your likelihood of winning on you'll
just win on turn 3.
It'll be tight to win on that, but on turn 3 it's going to be very high.
Yeah.
So with the deck, the reason that Osip was just like, I don't think I would want to play this deck. It's just like, it is very vulnerable to a lot of the things that people just play, right? Like, Magical Christmas Land Death, for example, is a massive, massive this matchup.
The increasing presence of Stone Rains in this format is like really bad for the Wild Growth Fertile Ground deck. Like, oh, and it also oaths out a
pyroclasm,
like a 10-10.
No.
For your
Earthquake Pyroclasm 2, which is just like, I'm there for Goblin Lackey, but I happen to kill all of your combo pieces, is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Right? And then just like the splash damage people have, where they're like playing cards like Ray of Revelation to combat decks like Oath Peluche and Magical Christmas Land Death. I'm just like, those cards happen to be really good against Wild Growth. like this deck has no Sterling Grove.
Yeah.
So like if you're playing against Cam and he's just like, mono always has 2 Sterling Groves in play, then Ray of Revelation isn't good anymore. But if your opponent doesn't have Sterling Grove, man, Ray of Revelation just like pinpoint accuracy. It is like a sniper from a mile away with a really good sight.
Okay, to be clear,
it puts a vibranium bullet like straight through Words of War.
Ray of Revelation is really good at washing one Sterling Grove anyways. Like, even if you have the mana to convert it to Enlightened Tutor, it's like, cool. Like, you get the -1 tutor, I get the flashback, like, deal 1,000 times. So you're likely to be able to wedge a Ray underneath the Grove. Obviously, Cam's deck gets a lot more leverage when it replenishes multiple Groves into play and in the sort of mid-late game, if you're a Ray of Revelation but no pressure deck. So
this is also a much worse replenish deck than Cam's deck, in part because it has no planes. Right, so its source of white mana is Saracen.
Well, it just doesn't bring any. It's not going to bring back any enchantments that directly affect the battlefield, like Solitary, Parallax, etc., etc.
Like I said, it's just a worse replenish deck, right? Like it's like I think it's like a replenish recovery deck versus Cam uses replenish as like a potential combo piece where he's just like oaths out an enchantress. His deck is now like full of enchantments in the graveyard as a result of activating a single oath. Just cast replenish and then he's off to the races. Yeah. And I don't believe that Rich's deck has this feature. But again, Rich's deck wins much faster, right? Like it is a combo deck, not a I would even call green white enchantress a deck.
I think he called it deck. Like, I don't know, he called it a prison deck maybe, or like a trending prison deck.
It's kind of a
engine prison deck. It's just like, instead of achieving the parfait endgame by playing a 1 mana card and a 2 mana card, it achieves it by playing a 2 mana card, sacrificing that for 1 mana to find a 3 mana card, and then another 3 mana card and 2 mana card, and then lots of more mana cards.
Well, it plays a bunch more turns.
Yeah. I mean, Rich basically described it as just like, okay, like both these decks, eventually, draw 20 cards and produce 20 mana. So it's just like, what do the respective decks do with that leverage? It's just like Green White Enchantress does it to like Pillow Fort, the people are calling it, which is like play Prison Enchantresses and convert the 20 mana and 20 cards to 40 mana and 40 cards. And then gets in with Pegasi for the win. Of course, Sacred Mesa getting cut from a lot of Enchantress decks, but you just still have to do it to them. It's just like this Sacred Mesa card is an embarrassing win con for a deck that can produce so much value. And Rich is just like, okay, we'll just win the
easy
game.
For Green White to beat you with just a Parallax Wave attack, right? Like,
yeah.
It's just there's just tons of decks that can't beat the 2 card.
Yeah, Paralopalescence is my preferred. Like, I like that bit about the green white deck because once again, it's a sub combo. It just happens to be an 8 mana sub combo, but between your Wild Growths and Serra Sanctums, you're like, pretty good at fairly producing 8 mana using Sterling Grove or Enlightened Tutor to get those down. Like, these are all things that I like about the green white Enchantress deck. I just don't like the sort of it's just so like, it's just I hate these decks that just like, I don't know, if you have all this mana and all this time and you draw all these cards, I don't know. I feel like you should just be a little bit more impressive than green white Enchantresses. Again, it's just a deck that I've never really understood how it's holding its place in the metagame. It's a deck that I won't disrespect the results on. I can't just pull up TC Deck's Landstill and scroll forever looking for good results. If I pull it up for TC Deck's Enchantress, you get a fair bit of decent results. Enchantress Pilot's really committed to the game. Of course, Cam Fulton, local, showing us how it's done. But yeah, I'm excited about Rich is calling it Tropical Enchantress, Combo Enchantress. Frantic Search is super awesome. Obviously, like I love a Frantic Search mana positive deck. That was like another interesting change up because Flint had Frantic Search in his monthly run. I kind of went to Sam. I was like, what about Frantic Search? It kind of looked like Sam was playing with it, but has gone up and down in the numbers. Rich is just like, this is
the sideboard.
Yeah, that's what Rich said, but I don't think that's up to date. I'm not sure.
I mean, it was in the sideboard of the deck that I looked at when I built my
right when you built it.
I put more Carpet of Flowers in because I mean, local metagame, there's just so many 12/12 decks. I thought Carpet of Flowers is just going to get me more mileage than Frantic Search. But I guess there was a lot of Rishadan ports, so Frantic Search is good against those.
Yeah, the Rishadan port Tango Wire situation.
So it's funny, the arguments that you make about not liking Enchantress, I find to be incredibly amusing. Those are like all traits that Oath Peluche has, and that you like Oath Peluche, right? Like Oath Peluche is literally a deck that's just like infinite mana, doesn't do anything for a million turns unless your opponent just lets you.
Yeah, I mean,
by definition, never does anything.
I mean, but the thing about Oath Peluche is that when it plays its 1G permanent successfully, like it doesn't wait to win the game; it just wins. Like
yeah, but like Enchantress. I mean, I think Enchantress is in a much more impressive situation than Oath Peluche most of the time on its 1G enchantment. But I'm not. I am well known for not liking Oath Peluche very much versus other maybe how good Oath Peluche is or other decks in the metagame. But I was just saying, like, all the things that you said that you don't like Enchantress for, those are the traits.
Yeah, but so basically the way that I would just say it is just like in your given starting 7 with Oath Peluche, you just get a lot more action out of your given starting 7 with Enchantress, right? So Oath Peluche kind of plays the starting 7 game where it's just like, I've got maybe 2 or 3 things to do plus a couple like utility stuff to do, like, between my lands, whatever permanents my deck happened to give me, be them Sylvan Libraries, Oath of Druids, or Sphere of Resistance. Hope they're good, hope they're solid, get some ports, get some wasties in, this, that, whatever. But ultimately, like you kind of play this game, and then if you get to this point where you're relying on your draw step to deliver you the goods, it's like, yeah, it doesn't feel great. Like Enchantress, it just feels like, and I've mostly just played across from Enchantress. Enchantress, it feels just kind of like they'll just be like, okay, Enchantress, and it'll be like, okay, like one, if it's not Argothian, like your deck just sucks. Like it's just like Enchantress is. They're waiting until turn 2 or turn 3 to play Enchantress's presence. Like, what happens if I just disenchant that? It's just like, oh, well, all my deck is just Wild Growths and Explorations and Elephant Grass now. And it's just like
a woefully
So it's a one card. So if you draw a hand, first of all, you can't mull a hand that has presence, right? So if you draw a hand that's just like presence and like whatever, it's a 1 card hand. Like it's just 3 mana. This 1 card. It's like, well, hope this gets there. And if it doesn't get there, you're in trouble. Like Oath, at least if you're just like, okay, I got, sometimes you open up a hand and it's got like, you're really relying on Sylvan Library to do a lot of work. Okay, that's not very good, right? Or you're really relying on Sphere, or sometimes your Sphere or Oath is dead against your opponent, so you kind of draw 7. It's like a 6 card hand, but at least your other 6 cards are like kind of solid. It's going to be a mix of like utility lands, maybe some Terravores, maybe some Swords of Plowshares. Like you're just like, you're doing things. Your curve is generally lower. Your card like it's a deck that has just barely enough synergy to get by, right? The synergy between Mox Diamond, Cataclysm, the synergy between Rishadan Port and Sphere of Resistance. Like all of those cards, they're sub combo pieces and they work on their own, right? Sphere on its own is good. Port on its own is good. Sphere with Port is insane, right? Like Oath of Druids is pretty good. Treetop Village is pretty good. Oath and Treetop Village is like, super awesome. So like, that's what I like about Oath Peluche. I also wanted a quick aside. I call it Oath Peluche because a little bit of pre-modern lore. Way, way, way back when Hursty had his very early episodes of the I Got Questions podcast, I don't know where the song came from. I don't know if it's like a Force of Phil song. I don't know if Fran just recorded it, but like for the first time, I heard this song on Will's pod that just goes like if Paulush or something like that, and that's like the beat, and I just like didn't know where that came from. I thought it was so funny, and it's just like in my head whenever I see Fran. I'm just like F Palush, and I'm sure Fran will phone in with this thing, and of course Will is just like, I'm here with my guests, and he's just like, remind me how to pronounce your name again, and Fran told the story. He was like, I actually didn't know how to pronounce my last name until Canister explained it to me, and he's just like, it's just Palushek. It's like Palush. It's Palush, like Palush Shek, like Palushek. So you can just say Palush. At least that's what I thought. I don't think he was sneaking the V sound in there because a W is supposed to be a V in Polish. So Brian Koval, BK, was just like, by the way, you're pronouncing his name wrong. It's Pavlushek.
Koval BC?
No, BK, Brian Koval, because he's Polish and his last name is Kowal. Koval.
Oh man, you are just like inceptioning people because there is actually a person called Brian
Koval. There's another Brian Koval. So for branding reasons, we call him Kowal or BK, but it's pronounced Koval. So he's just like, hey Lanny, you freaking
maybe
dumbass.
In the Eastern Bloc,
W's
pronounced Koval.
Yeah,
but in Murica. In Murica, USA,
it's Kowal.
Pronounce it Kowal.
It's Kowal. So he's just like, it's Pavlushek. You're pronouncing it wrong, and I'm like, that's good for you, bro. But it's Palush. And so, anyways, so I was just kind of F Palush, Oath Palush. It just kind of felt right to me, and that's why I call it Oath Palush. And people do all sorts of things. They change it back. They change it back to a V, so they'll call it Oath Pavlush. And I'm like, it's not Oath Pavlush because it's not F Pavlush, it's F Palush and Oath Palush. They'll do two words. They'll do Palush. Actually, they didn't do two words. They'll do they'll do two words. It's not Oath space Palush. It's Oath Palush. And then it's spelled
part of
Pauloosh. Palush. It's a great deck name. It's a great deck name.
I do it phonetically. You've ruined me with your V's and W's. And I have a more important question for you. Would it be the ultimate plot twist if I just rolled up to the brewery 1K with Squirrel Opposition, a la Greg Benton? It's just like, I'm in for Birds of Paradise into Manowar. Let's go.
I mean, you'll beat all the Dreadnought decks, evidently. Dreadnought.
I think I'm gonna. I hate Winter Orb and Tanglewire in this deck. So what if I just played like 4 Mana Wars?
Winter Orb is awesome. I don't love Tanglewire, but Winter Orb has got to be good in the deck.
Yeah, but what if I just played a bunch of Mana Wars?
I mean,
isn't Mana War just the absolute stone nuts against 12/12s and 1/1s that are sometimes 5/5s?
It can't block a Goblin Pile Driver, but otherwise I'm down. Like,
I mean, the deck has plenty of things to block a Goblin. The deck has 4 Wall of Roots, 2 Wall of Blossoms.
Yeah,
you can block a Goblin Pile Driver.
I don't know. Is it good against Oath of Druids? Like, what's the plan against Oath?
I don't know. Let them Oath. Like, I'm just so not afraid of a Terravor. That's the thing about one of the things I don't like about Oath Palush is like when we were testing your Burning Parfait deck for PSS. Like, and I was playing the Mike Arnold side, for example. Like, I lived in fear of the card Oath of Druids, right? Like, I had to do everything in my power to not lose to Oath of Druids. But, like, making a Terravor is just a joke. Like, it's just a card. like the number of times I've just gone straight through a Terravor with, Mog Fanatics or Elves, or it's just a guy. Who cares, right? Like, sometimes it's a 1919 and you lose that game. But, like, all the games that it's not a 1919, it's not getting you. Like, an Ancestor's Chosen who just gains 38 life, you're just boned, right? Or, like, if you're an aggro deck, or, like, a Shard Phoenix just, like, sweeps your... Like, a Shard Phoenix is so obnoxious. It, like, blocks and sweeps. It's just, like... It is hell on strategies. A Terravor is a creature with power and toughness. Like, you can plow it. I mean, you can. How many times are you going to Oath? I'm literally just going to, like, Tradewind Rider or Mana Warrior stupid Terravor. Just Oath again. How much library are you going to have left? Like, I don't even think I could lose. I think I'd just let you Oath all you wanted, and then you would quickly figure out that your like anti-creature enchantment is completely non-viable in this matchup. Heads up. It's the same thing you were saying about, like, oh, you would beat all the Dreadnought players. Like, literally, the card Oath of Druids is not going to win this.
Well, you can't.
Like,
so let me be clear on a couple things. I don't think you would establish a Tradewind Rider faster than the Oath player is going to establish the Oath, because
you don't have to. I could literally just survival for Mana Wars.
Yeah, but if you to be clear, the Oath is going to flip over a Ray of Revelation because you're playing Ray of Revelation in your deck
in a sideboarded game. Okay.
No. Just play one. I've been yelling this. I've been yelling this. The Oath Deluge main deck runs one Seal Cleansing and one Ray of Revelation because it has Enlightened Tutor. Or sorry, it runs two Seal Cleansings, right? It runs Seal Cleansings because it has Enlightened Tutor. Just run one Seal Cleansing and one Ray of Revelation main deck. It's just like, but your deck produces green and white mana. Play Ray of Revelation.
I hear what you're saying. And I'm just saying, right? Like,
I like sideboarded. I had a game against Survival where I just sideboarded up to 3 Ray of Revelations. Every time I triggered Oath, I also caught a Survival. It's like, so they had Survival creature.
Sounds great.
I had Terravor Ray of Revelation flashback.
We might not necessarily be in, like, this alternate reality where Terravor is lethal, right? Like, you're just like, oh, I established.
Yeah, but you're
6/6.
Mike, your deck has a bunch of dumb idiots. Like, it has a bunch of 0/1, 0/4s, and 0/5s.
Yeah, but you're only Oathing one freaking 6/6 a turn. Right?
Yeah,
like,
but
so
if you bounce, then I get 6/6, and then you bounce the 6/6. Then I Oath again. I get 12/12, and I replay 6/6. I play another 12.
If I'm in a situation,
then I have 2 Dreadnoughts in play.
If I'm in a situation where I'm actively active bouncing with Tradewind Rider,
you're not active bouncing with Tradewind Rider because I played an Oath on. Like, Mike, this sequence is not the sequence of Birds of Paradise go, Oath of Druids go, Wall of Roots go. I make a Terravor go, you Manowar the Terravor go. I'm like, okay, I'll make another Terravor, replay my Terravor go. Then you play Tradewind Rider or another Manowar. It's like, I have another one in play. I've got another one coming. Like, all 4 Terravors and Exalted Angel, like, every creature in my deck is going to be on the table because I can produce 2 per turn and you can only remove 1 per turn at the cost of substantial amount of mana. It's like, not to mention my deck has, like, Swords to Plowshares and Cataclysm and a bunch of other things that ruin your life.
Yeah, your whole, like, I mean, the whole idea of, like, Oath Peluche being able to draw the cards that it wants versus a deck that has blue in it is just dubious to me. And there's just, I'm adamant that this would not work out the way that you think. I think that this deck would destroy Oath.
I think I'm just saying, like, that Wall of Blossoms lines up very poorly against Oath of Druids. Like, do you agree that Mana Dorks and Walls are not good against Oath of Druids?
I think that if that is the extent of your statement, I would be foolhardy to argue.
Exactly. And I'm not saying this to trap you, Mike. I'm not saying this to trap you. I'm saying this because I'm of course referencing Canister's great article on sideboarding, which is just like, when you're sideboarding, consider your card matchups. Like, what cards does your opponent have? What cards do you have? So if you have a deck that's full of Birds of Paradise, Wall of Roots, and Wall of Blossoms, and your opponent has a deck that has some, it's got 4 Oath of Druids. Like, the fact that, like, this is why I hate, like, this is why Oath of Druids is bullshit to me, because it's just like, okay, well, so many, like, every creature in pre-modern right now is so heavily oppressed by Swords to Plowshares. The fact that it has to be oppressed by Swords to Plowshares and Oath, like, really sucks, right? Because, like, what's the best kind of creature against Swords to Plowshares? A creature that costs 1 mana. It's like, well, what's the worst creature into Oath?
Or a creature that beats you without having to do a thing that, gives you a window to swords. Right?
Yeah, like,
yeah, so
obviously, but or like Meddling Mage, right? But like just vacuum creatures, like, a Savannah Lions is pretty good into Swords to Plowshares because you're exchanging evenly on mana, and if your opponent is waiting to Swords to Plowshares, et cetera. Like, but the thing is, Savannah Lions and Weathered Wayfarer, and Birds of Paradise, which are all fairly even with Swords to Plowshares, are really, really bad into Oath. And so I just don't like how
So-
the mana dorks. So basically, what I'm saying is like you're starting with a bunch of cards in your deck that are inherently behind against a card in your opponent's deck. So you're making up ground. I think opposition is obviously the most compelling. Like opposition is gonna handle Terraform.
Well, I mean, if you can't deal with the opposition, which I feel like if let's say we're in a sideboard, if it's a game one situation, I draw 2 oppositions. There's no way you're winning.
Right,
Like,
right. The first one I will flashback my Ray of Revelation, which I put in my main deck.
And then you will lose.
Yeah, I'll lose to the
then
second
you're gonna have
one,
all 6 creatures in play and be like, I've done no damage this game.
Yeah,
and that
Cataclysm won't help me out of that spot too.
Oh yeah, nothing will save you, right? If the blue-green deck draws 2 oppositions, right, in game 1. But the other thing that I think you might be underrating, which is why I was saying about context, just like, yeah, if you only want to compare Wall of Blossoms against Oath of Druids, this is a really bad matchup. But like one deck has Infinite Spike Weaver, right? And you can't even deal with an Infinite Spike Weaver with Swords to Plowshares. Like, you can't win. Like that's the thing.
Yeah,
It's just the context of the blue green deck is so much better than the context
but you're comparing like this is basically I think there's just us looking at it from 2 different angles, because when we talk about Enchantress and when we talk about the Tradewind and Rider deck, like I think that you are fixated on decks that have overwhelmingly good end games. Like you're like this end game is unbeatable, and because the Oathplush end game, Oathplush doesn't have an end game. The end game is like whatever Cataclysm or attacking with the 3/3. Like both of these end games are very unimpressive to you, and the prospect of just drawing 1 card a turn and not doing any and just tapping with a Rishon Import, like really.
I think that is a very amateurish way of thinking about how I think about Magic, but I could see why you would have that.
Well, because that's always your argument. You're just like
but like.
Your argument is like, I'm going to have Tradewind Rider, 3 creatures, opposition. Like, you're going to have it all
Danny,
rolled up.
My idea of an unbeatable endgame might literally be I hit you with a Goblin Lackey. The game's only going to last 4 turns.
All right.
My endgame is unbeatable by definition because I beat you already.
Let me circle back. Let me circle back to my point. Sorry. My point with this is just that the reason why I think it's good, and you might be right, like, we might play this out and just basically find out that it goes very poorly for Oathbleach just because the cards don't line up. But the reason why I like Oath, and the reason why I actually like Terravor Oath better than Shard Phoenix Oath, in a sense in this case, is
right
that
now.
in the way these decks line up is that the thing that Parfait always more or less always gave its opponents, with a few caveats, is time. So if you put Oath of Druids in play and your opponent triggered it, you went back to parity, right? When Oathbleach triggers Oath of Druids 1 or 2 or 3 times, all of a sudden your opponent is behind. And so whatever your game plan is to circumvent the Oath, like you have to do it now, right? So when we're playing, Parfait Oath against the Solution, for instance, the Solution would just like trigger Oath, the Shard Phoenix would come out, the Chosen would come out, stuff would trade around, the Chosen would get plowed, like whatever. And then the Solution deck just needs to hang out and just draw cards until it gets disenchants. This was the same for like blue-white weenie, like meddling mage strategies. If you couldn't get mage on Oath and they could get Oath and they could do their thing, you would just like hang out, draw a disenchant, unload your hand, right?
You have Gaia's Blessing and Swords of Plowshares. They have no way to in a game 1 situation. They have no way to stop you.
Well,
those 2 cards.
They had the. I understand what you're saying because obviously Parfait has other cards going on, but
I mean, obviously we played the matchup, and I'm saying there's just not enough tools.
No. But
right?
just basically a lot of these weenie decks came feeling pretty confident that they could beat Oath. I mean, I guess I might have this anachronistic because Parfait Oath wasn't up against the weenie decks, but basically, like if you're playing some sort of mid-rangey deck with creatures, like the Rock is actually a pretty good example, right? Like when Parfait dropped Oath against the Rock would lose its, would have to like, obviously Wall of Blossoms didn't play well, but it's like Wall of Blossoms trigger, you get a Shard Phoenix or Chosen. It's like the Rock doesn't really care about that, right?
But it's a terrible, like, it's a terrible situation because you can say that the Rock doesn't really care about it, but it also gets put in a situation where they can't really win ever. right? Like they need to be able to. They need to be able to deal with the battlefield. They can't.
You're correct, Mike. You're correct. The rock player can't advance, right? And that's what Parfait uses Oath to do. But the Terravor Oath decks use Oath. Like if they trigger Oath, then they get to advance, right? So they get to leapfrog you in parity, and now all of a sudden you're on the defense, right? You start on the offense, you're putting permanents on the board, and then for every permanent you put on the board, every creature you put on the board, the Terravor Oath deck gets to make a monster instead. And then if you don't deal with the Oath, it keeps out putting out monsters. So if you deal with the Oath in an untimely fashion, this is my point. It's like if you get to whatever you want, your Trade Wind Rider, your Naturalize, whatever you need to handle Oath. If you get to it in an untimely fashion, you also are left with monsters behind to deal with, which is like, Parfait never left monsters behind. The monster has
lethal damage is one thing. So like there's a couple of things that I would disagree with. First of all, you have to start with the paradigm of, am I playing against a deck that cares if I have a Terravor in play? The Terravor is just a Tarmogoyf. It's just a creature that has high power and toughness. It has no other features that are interesting about it. In fact, it has a disadvantage, which is that you can play against a Terravor by utilizing cards like Tormod Script, which is not an anti-creature card, but actually happens to defang a Terravor, right? So it is just a guy with power and toughness. That means that like anybody who doesn't care about power and toughness doesn't lose to it. That's why I was just like, okay, one of the reasons I don't like Oath Pollution is it can never beat blue-white control. And you guys were like, of course it can. And then Fran played, he's just like, oh no, Mike's right. It can never beat blue-white control. Why? Because blue-white control doesn't care if you have 4 guys that have power and toughness and you're 75. You're just never going to be.
Yeah, but
can't happen.
But this is
right. Like
this is a little bit okay. So it can if blue white control leaves behind a 1/1 and lets you trigger.
Yes.
So Mike. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is this is card advantage. Like this is the reason why it's good is because you're getting them for free, right? Nobody's arguing that Terravor is an overwhelming threat. It just happens to be an overwhelming threat if you have to answer Oath of Druids and Terravor. So that you can get your 0-4 on the battlefield.
So I actually wanted to address the thing you were saying before, which is like, oh, I only like decks that have overwhelming endgames. That's actually not how I would phrase it. I would say like there are decks that are trying to get to an endgame, right? And if they jump through all the hoops to get to their endgame, my presupposition is that they should win. And if they jump through all these hoops and then don't win, then there's something wrong with the deck.
Right.
That's the way that and you can't play a deck that has something fundamentally.
I'll say this. The issue I have was
like it's just cooperative magic.
I was being reductive. My issue that I have is more like when we're talking about the I have this versus I have this thing, you tend to bring up like an I have this that either costs more mana or involves more cards, right? Because they'd be like, okay, I have Ray of Revelation, and you'd be like, I have 2 Sterling Groves, and then my question is like, what turn is this? When did you play those Sterling Groves?
So like, that's a really good counter argument. So the problem is, whenever I play Ray of Revelation, I'm only ever playing Ray of Revelation against Cam. Let's say examples. I always use Cam as an example because he always has 2 fucking Sterling Groves, right? But the thing is, like, the Ray of Revelation decks don't ever put enough pressure on Cam that he can't assemble 2 Sterling. If I were playing a white weenie deck with Ray of Revelation, or like some like an aggro zoo deck, that might matter a lot. But the Ray of Revelations only ever go in decks like Oath Pollution that can't put pressure on it.
I mean, I disagree on 2 points. One, Oath Pollution is quite good against Enchantress, demonstrably.
I don't know. That's just not true. I think that like the Enchantress players are donkeys. Then I've watched it play on both.
Well,
sides. Can't imagine.
Well,
it's the same as Blue White. Like I said, you cannot lose this matchup if you play competently.
To be clear, like Cam lost to Oath Pollution at Sacred Torch.
But
I think we commentated that match.
Did we? You can't really lose. This matchup is overwhelming.
Mike, I don't know why you love 2 Sterling Groves so much. It's just so bad.
Every time I have interaction, he has 2 Sterling Groves.
If I were to choose a card that if I drew 2 of was like super good for me, I would be choosing cards like Gush, Meddling Mage.
This isn't the core.
Oath of Druids. Like
argument is look, I don't think it's fair. The thing you're saying, like, oh, well, I'm going to name things that are harder to put together or take more take more resources to put together as an answer. That's a bad argument, right? But the thing is that you have to look at the context of the decks, right? Like, you don't start with a 1919 in play. Like Oath Peluche has countless fault points, right? Like, you pretend like it has no fault points. It actually has among the most fault points of all the decks in.
I'm not saying it has no fault points. It has a huge fault points. It has a huge rare revelation sized fault point.
But all of its fault points are critical, which is like, if somebody, that's one of the reasons I don't like the deck, because if somebody pushes on a fault point, you just lose. And you have no recourse. So like when Tom was playing against SWB, he's just like, oh, I don't even understand how you could lose to the mono green version. And I said, the mono green version is like a 90% match.
Yeah,
you're never gonna win. And he's just like I don't even understand. SWB annihilated.
You talked about
having
this.
Played this game, he's just
like, I know.
Realize let's not things could go wrong.
Let's not rehash that.
I lose.
Let's not rehash that.
But the thing is, so in the blue green versus Oath Peluche matchup, the problem is that Oath Peluche's endgame is finite. So like if you look at like, if you were playing Landy Hoth in the exact same situation, blue-green doesn't actually put a lot of pressure on you to lose the game. But so the penalty for both players is you keep playing Magic. Except for one of the decks is infinite and one of the decks is finite. And one of the decks can build advantages with almost any card, and the other deck tops up at 4 cards. Like, literally at the 4th Terravore, you have no more advantage in your 75. You had to win with those 4.
What blue green decks are you?
This is the opposition deck I'm looking at.
Oh yeah.
In the mid game, every single card you draw that's not a land is an advantage. Versus Oath Peluche, if they get all their machinery, they get 100% of their machinery, they top up at 4 cards. They have no advantage after the 4th card. This is a bad fault point in a game where the penalty for both players, for either player executing their plan, is to keep playing Magic.
Right, but that's
one of the problems. Both decks are designed to keep playing Magic.
I don't think that holds water, because that's what I'm telling you. It's like you're dead at the point. Like,
you're not going to lose to a 6/6. It's just not going to happen.
But the thing is, the 6 your deck is built around having like 5 creatures in play, right? Like a Deranged Hermit.
This deck ripped through all the best players in the tournament was playing against, including you. I'm telling you, this deck is way more legs than you're giving it credit for.
I'm not talking about how well I'm not telling you how well it lines up. I can see how good it is against Dreadnought, okay? But I'm not placing any emphasis on what it does against Dreadnought. I'm telling you,
Dreadnought is the same as Oath Peluche in that it has a finite number of
if Phyrexian Dreadnought brought along another Phyrexian Dreadnought afterwards, like if you had an Oath of Druids, and it always, like, I'm telling you, Oath of Druids always poops out Phyrexian Dreadnought in this deck.
If you have either a survival of the fittest, or first of all, the blue-green deck has a concept which Eric Taylor talked about, which is called Morses, which is not something that people talk about strategically. I've written a bunch of stuff on Morses, but it was all 20 years ago, so people just don't know about Morses. Morses is a concept which is like, one deck has so much stuff, the other deck can never win. And like, if you make arguments around conventional card advantage, it just means you don't understand Morses. So imagine there's like a deck where it's just like, all right, my deck is 40 enchantment removal cards and 40 enchantment removal cards, 30 enchantment removal cards, 4 Tormod's Crypts, and 4 Gaia's Blessings or something, and then utility lands. It's hard for me to imagine ever losing to Replenish, right? Replenish doesn't have enough stuff. It doesn't matter how many cards it does.
I understand the concept.
This deck has so much shit that is bad for their strategy.
Mike, I don't understand. I agree with you that, like, I feel like this is a leak in your analysis, because I feel like you're like this shows to me where the problem is, because I understand the concept of Morses quite clearly. I actually love this concept. The way that I've always conceptualized it was quite simple. It's just like, if both decks started with all 60 cards in their hands, who would win, right?
Okay, if both decks started with all 60 cards in their hand, clearly blue-green would win. right? Like that's not even.
Do you agree that this is a relatively decent visualization of this concept?
No. That I mean, I don't know. I don't think that. So because I think that one of the things that's bad is that you're not considering time. Right? Like
but the whole purpose of this exercise is to remove time from the equation.
Yes, there's not enough answers in the green-white deck to even possibly deal with like just minor threats in the blue-green deck if it started with all 60 cards. Right? Like there's not even an argument. There's only 6 threats in one deck.
This is why I feel like we're having trouble agreeing on the terms of which deck has advantage. And I think this is why we have trouble on agreeing on the terms by which any deck, has advantage over Oathblush, because like the reason why the deck excited me so much was the same concept, which is just like Parfait had to play a game that was pretty simple, right? My deck is bottomless, so I just need one copy of every card that handles every situation. And then if you engaged in this exercise, put my deck in my hand, who's going to win? Like Parfait did put its deck in his hand, so it was really good at doing that.
Sure.
And then it made sure that it would win. So under the Morzies paradigm, Parfait had a unlimited power ceiling, right? Like it could literally beat any deck under that principle.
Well, Parfait has a very high ceiling with regards to conventional card advantage. There's lots of decks it could just never beat, though, right? Like, if like somebody who doesn't, like you, for example, at LobsterCon played with Duress in your main deck, which wasn't universally played, right? There's a lot of decks that could play cards like Upheaval or something that could probably put Parfait.
I played 3 Duress in my main deck, to be clear, and conventionally there were 2, so it wasn't a huge change.
Or some had, like, a year earlier there was 0 in the main deck.
Yeah, right? But that was Duress showed up. Mark Vogt added the Duress in what became the canonical version of Parfait. So
yeah, I'm just saying, like, you could just play a Sunder or Upheaval based deck that probably Parfait would have a very hard time beating.
Yeah.
Because like its ability to generate,
but just looking at decks in the format, right?
Is just irrelevant against somebody who could zero the field and then put a lethal threat.
Yeah, I mean, I also had Mana Leak in my deck, and there was like little things like that, and so but regardless, like, the point being, like, if you looked at the decks of the format and you looked at Parfait, like if like Parfait was just always going to win if it started with if you just lined up all the cards against each other.
Yeah, sure. On a conventional basis.
Because it's infinite, because like the deck has no bottom, right? So then it was the only interesting thing, and this was like the thing that I just like really, and maybe this ties into the other thing of like, I don't understand control, because like I don't really consider games of Magic. I consider deck construction, and I used to build a deck in Modern. The 5-color Niv Mizzet control. So this was in 2018 Modern or whatever, or right after the first Modern Horizons was released and Arkham's Astrolabe was in the format. So I played this like mid-range control deck with Niv Mizzet Reborn, just played a 6/6, drew a bunch of cards, and people.
But that's the deck you loved when we met.
I was playing it in Pioneer when we met as well. So, but one of the big decks at the time was blue-white control. And so in the blue-white control versus the 5-color Niv Mizzet matchup, people will talk about sideboarding. I was like, you need to sideboard into the densest deck that you possibly can. Your deck needs to be as gassy as possible, to the point that you're cutting out mana sources, because the deck used to run Utopia Sprawl for like a little bit of fixing a little tempo boost. It's just like, you just take those out because you just don't need any tempo. So I would...
I'm sorry, what's the context that you want to make a dense deck?
Sideboarding against blue-white control in Modern.
Okay. Oh, okay, because you're in a situation where like...
Arms race, yeah.
They feel like they have to counter everything. They're going to run out of counters before you run out of
counters. Well, you're basically... They have counter spells, card draw spells, and planeswalkers, right? And you have, 6/6s, planeswalkers, and like, big splashy multicolored cards.
I understand conceptually, sure.
So...
And then like a Utopia Sprawl is just like a dead card.
Exactly. Utopia Sprawl just basically
you're a little
does
faster,
nothing.
but... The game is going to go 40 turns. So
and so people would tell me, it's like,
unless you're going to win super fast.
Yeah, and so I had Little Teferi in the deck, and people were just like, you don't want to turn 2 Little Teferi them, and I'm like, no, it just doesn't matter. Like, they have Prismatic Ending or whatever, like they have answers to Little Teferi. Like, gotching them with a Little Teferi is not worth, drawing a Utopia Sprawl at any point in the game afterwards. So I use this
That's really
concept. I use this concept to kind of like download the matchup for me, and I thought it was super interesting that games of Magic could be like this. I personally consider decks winning by Morsies to be a great minority of how games of Magic are won.
Nobody tries to play for Morsies except maybe for Battle of Wits, right? It just so happens that some decks have Morsies, and if you don't recognize that they have Morsies, then you're gonna miss something. So I'll give you a really easy example, right? Like I played Eradicate in the sideboard of my playable Dead Guy Ale deck, and Fran and I had a discussion. He's like, I guess that's a card. Like he just like kind of dismissed it, and I'm like, you understand if I'm playing? It's people play Peluche decks at the New York meetups, right? Like they play mono green or they play whatever Oath Terror decks. I'm like, you understand what happens if I cast this card successfully, right? He's just like, whatever. I'm like, no, like it annihilates your likelihood of winning, first of all. But more than that, it cuts off the entire engine of your deck. The reason that your deck exists no longer has validity. It's not just that I killed 4 creatures with 1 card, right? So now every Oath of Druids just does nothing. Right. So like it's like I 8-for-1'd you and I cut off your end game. You explained something to me that was very telling, right? Which was that a way that the Zoomers play that's different from people of my generation is that the Zoomers will often play in a way that makes it so that they will lose more quickly rather than playing a game that they get to keep playing, but they're not going to win. Right. So they're just like, I will make this play. If it's successful, that's great, right? But if it's unsuccessful, or if on the alternative, right, like player of my generation is like, I'm going to play for a bunch of turns, but I'm not going to win at the end of those turns, right? That crystallized something really valuable for me. I ended up taking out Eradicate more recently, even after talking to Fran, even though I think that it's good from the theoretical structure that I described to him, because the black-white deck has Morsies. And I watched one of the videos, and Fran's just like, "Oh, this deck can never beat a deck with Eternal Dragon." And playable Dead Guy has Eternal Dragon, and more than enough spot removal to deal with 4.
Yeah.
Right?
Dead Guy, the black-white mid-range removal deck is like pretty good against Oath Bluish because it runs like a bunch of mana sources and a bunch of sort of compact card advantage stuff like Gerard's Verdict, and the only downside is that
there's also Dust Bowl.
Yeah, and it gets pretty decent Dust Bowl leverage. The only downside, of course, is that it's just a little soft to Cataclysm.
But you could just play for that, right, and sandbag all the extra lands that you drew, because the problem is, even though it's bad against Cataclysm, which I would 100% agree on,
Cataclysm doesn't win the game outright. Yeah,
can't pressure them with damage. All it can do is put out guys, right? Yeah. It puts out guys, and you just kill the guys. And at some point, they've run out of threats.
Yeah, they would have to diversify with like Black Vice or other shenanigans.
Yeah, so he's like, oh, you can't really win if they play a strategic game, right? So it's like, oh, I guess like my whole Eradicate strategy, while valid, is just unnecessary, right? It's like people who sideboard Clarence.
Well, so I want to just circle back to why I was like making the point that I don't think that like I just don't like. This guides my thinking in the sense that Oath Peluche is probably like I've talked about it I've said it many times, like I feel like it's the Rock but good, right? So all the Rock does is creates a window to win the game, like at around turn 10, before once you've gotten your first couple counter punches in, and your opponent like hasn't had a chance to just have like a tiny sip of water to get back into the ring. Like that's how the Rock wins, right?
I could not disagree with you.
Yeah, so
very different, right? As the guy who loves both and badmouths both, let me clarify this thing, right? I love the Rock, as you know. I just don't think it's a great win rate deck. I love Oath Peluche from some dimensions. I love the fact that it exists. I love its level of innovation. The thing that is annoying to me is how good you and Fran think that it is. And I think that part of the reason that it was so successful early on is people just didn't understand how.
I mean, that's definitely true. I'm never going to deny that basically like people simply didn't understand.
And they were just handing wins to the deck.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? And like if you understand how like the end game is going to play out, the biggest problem I had with Oath Pollution, and I think Fran tried to address this more recently with Magical Christmas Land Death, is just like playing 4 Sylvan libraries, which by the way is still not enough, right? Like
you need like 10 Sylvan libraries. Yeah.
Like you're just in this spot where
you need Sylvan Library Companion.
There is no cure for a deck that has 32 mana sources if the objective of the deck is to keep
I mean, right?
Like, but you just draw, and your opponent draws out of it and beats you.
But that's
literally what happened.
No, I mean, but that's exactly my point, is that it just simply does the thing. It's just better at creating those windows than the Rock is, because it attacks things that matter. Like one of the big issues with the Rock is that, it leans so much on the hand disruption, but hand disruption is like super inefficient. You have to like 1, name the correct card with Cabal Therapy. 2, you have to spend your mana to do it. 3, your opponent needs to like just not draw the thing that like is good that you just got them to discarded.
I hate relying on hand disruption. I mean, like the number of times on the Pro Tour that I've been in my life where I put my opponent to 0 cards in hand and they just ripped a win off the top is just. I mean, imagine you're Darwin Castle, right? And you're playing against Kai Buddha. You literally hit him with Croesus the Purger, make him discard all the blue cards in his hand. He has no spells in his hand. His board includes a single Sapphire Medallion and 3 lands. He looks at you, looks at his board, draws an Illusions of Grandeur, plays it. You hit him again. He's dead on board. Pays the upkeep, draws a Donate. Casts Donate.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I feel about hand disruption. And Darwin Castle is a Pro Tour champion and a Hall of Famer. And that is the thing that I remember about Darwin.
Yeah, there you go.
That he had Croesus the Purger, hit Kai Buddha with it on the 3rd turn, which you cannot ask for more in your big creature reanimator deck.
Yeah.
And 0 cards in hand, Kai Buddha annihilated him.
Yeah, and so
perfect.
Like I just think that Oath Pollution is better at creating those windows and just putting opponents in spots where they're basically just not quite effective, or they're just like less, they're just like less advantaged. So like the spot that I'm talking about, which is like pretty simple, is like Mana Dork versus Oath of Druids. Like I'm in a great spot, like because you have to answer this Oath of Druids, or else you're going to have to answer this Oath of Druids in a creature. So if you do one or the other, like I'm still ahead, and like I converted for more value. Of course, your deck, which is a synergy deck, like if you get your synergy going, your synergy trumps my 1 card, but I got so much leverage out of that card. And then like furthermore, like, my deck also has Cataclysm.
You just have to finish the play. That's all I'm saying. You just have to finish the play.
Yeah.
And I think Oath Pollution has a hard time finishing the play because it has so much land.
I mean, that's true, but here, like my point is like what I'm interested, like the reason why I think it's good is because I like my pre-flop odds, my equity from the point that I have Oath of Druids versus Mana Dork, like my equity is just like huge. I'm just in an amazing spot. Like even if you like, I can't be busted, right? Like I'm ahead, and you have to remove 2 permanents, and like I just cast 1 card.
Yes, you are ahead right now. Like if we're watching, if we're watching the Advantage Bar on Pro Tour coverage, even if we're watching the Advantage Bar, we're watching poker when it used to be on TV all that. Maybe it's still on TV. I just don't have TV, right? We're just like, oh, likelihood to win, and be like, oh no, the turn got you. It went from 75% likelihood to win to 2% likelihood to win, right? Like I feel like that happens with Oath Pollution a lot because it just draws too many lands. You're like, I'm way ahead.
Yeah, but I'd rather
play, and then 3 turns went by and I didn't do.
I'd rather have my opening hand and like start with a lot of match equity, like a lot of game equity, and then like, because this is, I mean, the other thing is like understanding Oath Pollution is also a big part of understanding Fran. Like Fran, between me and you, is probably the person that we've seen play more games of Magic than anyone else at this point.
Fran made Blue-White Argent not, right? There's no excuse.
No,
that's not one.
But the thing is, he also plays it. Watching him play it is also very revealing. It's like anyways, I'll say this. Like I was just thinking about it. It's just like, man, if I wanted to study play style, like watching Fran videos, being like the thing that I'm like the person that I'm watching play that plays much differently than me, is like probably one of the most educational things, because Fran plays for advantage bar more so than he plays for whatever the big picture win is, right? Because like you like
really,
as you know about me, like I always play to produce a material step to winning the game.
I will say this about Fran. First of all, I love watching Fran videos. It's like my favorite thing on YouTube by a mile. Sorry, other streamers who I used to say I liked, but you're no Fran to me. The thing that I like best about him that's different versus how I play is Fran doesn't miss a point. I mean, he does miss a point, then he'll say he missed a point or whatever, but he's so much better at catching straight points than I am. Like just like randomly attacking with the Mistress Factory or something.
Yeah, he's very efficient.
I would have left up one. He's very good at that. The comment I was making was, one of the things I love most about Fran is he just tries all these different decks, which is the thing that I want to do the most, right? But I mostly just play IRL. So if there's not a meetup, I'm not going to get to play stacks yet. So I have...
You can play 4 different decks in a month. Functionally, so Fran basically is in the same spot, but yeah.
Yeah, I have like, stacks built. Let's look right next to me. I'm like, I have Doomsday built. I want to play my meme red deck, but I only get, I guess I have like 3-4 meetups a month, but I also want to win, right? Fran just wants to make the content. I want to try to get first place every time.
Well, no, he wants to. I mean, he's kind of half and half, because obviously, there's been more pressure in the online play where he's been forced to, if he's brewing, he's been forced to work a little harder to ensure that his brew is going to be competitive rather than just like running something completely crazy out there. But basically my completion of that thought is just like, when you hear Fran talk about his gameplay, like, and narrate his thoughts, he is always like, his objective every single turn is basically spend his mana super efficiently, create as much card advantage, create as much value as efficiently, capture as much tempo as possible, or put his opponent in a position where they are not able to efficiently use their mana, efficiently use their cards, and efficiently gain advantage. And I'm not saying he's tunneled.
That is very different from how I play.
Yeah.
And that is also speaks to what you were saying before, which is like, my overarching objective at all times is to get to my end game.
Yeah.
And that have my end game beat my opponent's end game.
And this is why Oathblush is such a deck that turns you off so much, and a deck that just like is a perfect fit for Fran, because like, yeah, I also have a hard time with the deck. I appreciate it, and the big point is, like I said, is like, because I think it's a good version of the rock, and like, because I think that your mindset about ending the game, exists in a little bit of a more Z's value control space, and mine exists in more of like a tempo.
Really? My favorite deck is Jackal-Pup.deck. So that's why I think that it's...
Yeah, but that's such a like, I mean, that's so... that goes back into like me just being like Burn, Dreadnought, and Parfait are just like the same deck. But I don't want to get too much into it, but because I still haven't explained that in my own head.
I think I'm more like Manowin Rich, which is like, I want to monopolize how much fun there is.
Yeah.
Burn monopolizes a high percentage of the fun.
I mean, Burn is just Burn, like, the amount that Burn is a tempo deck, it's more, or the amount that Burn is a tempo deck, it's more so a combo deck, right? And then the rest of the time it's just mid range and control, and it's like the end of the game. Okay, I'll put it another way. That's not the statement I want to make about Burn. The statement I want to make about Burn is something that I've said in the past, which is just that in the Burn deck, on your draw step, you're either going to draw Mountain or a card that deals damage. And so that's a lot different than when you're playing the Rock or when you're playing Oathblush. And I think that level of predictability allows you to plot an end game very consistently, right? So one of the things that Fran is pretty good at is, because he's capturing so much value in front of him, he's capturing as much equity that's in front of him, that's on the table. He also talks about his draw step like a lot differently than probably how you and I conceptualize our draw step, which is just kind of like, he's like, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to use all my mana. My opponent's going to maybe can do this, this, and this. And if I draw this will happen. This will happen. This will happen. Like he's pretty good at just sort of like, I just think he's like this. I think he's like a range player. Like he's just playing. He's playing his range. He's playing for maximum equity, and he's just really good at identifying how to capture equity in a match. And it's just really interesting to watch because I just don't think like that. I just don't sit here like I think like that in limited. Sometimes I'm like, oh well, I'm just gonna spend as much mana as I can, and that's probably the best play. But like,
Chapin used to get after me for that. He said. You heard this in like 1997, and you said never stopped playing that way. But that's not a way a good player plays.
Well, it's still good. I don't know. In limited, it's still pretty relevant, and it's still relatively true that whoever spends the most mana wins.
Yeah, but that's just because contemporary limited is about deployment.
Yeah, okay. But anyways, let's back to
like that's not what pre-modern is about.
But back to Fran, it's just
it's not the only thing pre-modern is about.
Yeah. Fran just gets into these decision points where he's just like, okay, like, he gets it. I mean, I'm not saying that's the right play or the wrong play, but like in one of his recent videos, he was just like, has Sylvan Library, has another play, and has Port You as his options. And he's like considering playing around a counterspell. And if in my head, I'm like, if you're going to play around the counterspell, then just bait spell them and then go for Sylvan and like whatever. But instead, he just like goes to Port You. He goes for Port You, like maintains parity, gets like a tiny bit of advantage, makes things slightly awkward for his opponent. Like, instead of basically going for like Sylvan Library and it resolves and you basically win the game or not, he kind of like blends together his three options and just comes up with one that puts him up a few points on this turn, and then next turn
did he end up winning the game?
I don't remember. I think it might have been like a hard matchup or not hard match. I think he won the game because he was playing red green against blue white, and he just like got off all the stone rains on their white sources.
So my thought is this, which is Fran said something which is just like, I'm critical of Oath Peluche because I say that it doesn't have any agency, right? When he played mono red this week, he said he felt the same way. He said like, all of his losses were helpless, right? And as I thought about this, and I thought about like the decks I like versus decks that versus Oath Peluche, like for the sake of argument. I think the decks that I like, including land still, right? But like combo decks that I like, aggro decks that I like, it doesn't matter what my opponent's opinion is, right? The Jackal Pup does 2. My opponent might have a 12/12, which trumps a Jackal Pup, but my opponent doesn't actually have an opinion over whether or not my cards work, right? Like if you're critical of land still, right? I'm like, I'm pretty good at executing the land still game plan in such a way that it is annoying for my opponent, and they just literally don't get a vote, right? They either have like a bigger decree than I do, or I'm going to generate an advantage, right? And that like maybe I can parlay that advantage into a win, maybe I can't. That is the opposite of Oath Peluche. Your opponent constantly has a vote on whether or not your cards are even relevant, right? Like just think about how Rich and Sam are like biasing their Enchantress decks right now. Just like, okay, well, if people want to play Rishadan Port, I'm going to play Frantic Search. Land played 4 Teferi's Response, right? Because of quote unquote respect for Rishadan Port. That's really a bad place to be in the metagame, where your opponent can ignore you or annihilate you for executing your game plan. And that is not something that it's been 30 years since people have been like Jackal Pupping on the first turn. Nobody has an answer to Jackal Pup other than to try to be better than Jackal Pup, and otherwise Jackal Pup just gets them, right? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, I see. I mean, I see what you're saying. I think I think once again, you're just highlighting a key difference in what's motivating you versus others.
It's a philosophical difference because it's like I'm sorry, Fran said that he felt helpless, right? Like he had no agency, and I feel like I don't know, man. I have like 5 land hands I keep all the time that I don't think I can lose with, right? Like I just make my opponent play a certain way, like by how I cast my shoulders or something.
I mean, I haven't had a chance to.
Trap.
I haven't had a chance to watch the video of Fran piling burn, but I assume he can just chalk it up to be like running into double Enchantress, double whatever other.
First of all, he wins all of those first games. He beats Enchantress in the first game twice. He beats Dreadnought in the first game. We all make mistakes, but he just literally misclicks at one point to lose a match. We're just like, he had agency in that case, right? He didn't cast his.
Well, he just didn't like maybe he just didn't like how he didn't even like how it felt when he was winning. I mean, plenty of people don't enjoy playing burn, Mike. Like,
I think one of the divides he might not be in on it because he references 3 gears twice, but like there's like you look at your opening hand and you look at what your opponent's first land is, and sometimes you just have to pick the gear, and you're just like, this is my gear, and you can't let up on the accelerator, right? Because here's the thing about burn, it's not powerful. Like you can't compare burn to a deck that's just like, I'm going to draw.
Can't compare to burn for decks with Gush or Argothian Enchantress.
Yeah. You can't compare them. Burn has 2 advantages. One of them is if you get in the right gear in the right matchup, your opponent can never win because you have strategy superiority. And the other advantage is it's pretty fast. If you're gonna put the pedal.
Yeah, it's relatively good at removing your opponent's agency.
Yeah, I think he beats Mono Blue Dreadnought on turn 3 on the play in one of the games. So I'm just like, I can't imagine your opponent felt like they had a lot of agency in your double Jackal Pup Fire Blast game, right? Just like, oh, I drew Ball Lightning. Let's go. Like nice. Like here it comes. All right. So, but you kind of have to pick your lane and take advantage of those because if you pick the wrong lane, this is just another one of those games where you dealt 17 and are complaining, later.
Yeah, right? That's just how burn is. Like that's the nature of the deck. I don't know. It's clear to me Fran's very comfortable piloting decks that he basically designs. And like it just came down to like it also just really explains the opt versus impulse thing where Fran like wants to opt, like he just wants to cast opt, use his mana, capture the percentage now versus waiting to cast impulse or just being in a position where impulse might have to be awkward. It's like I'm just like I just want to look at more cards because I think that's what my deck does
because of how Itai lost to Selden in the finals of LobsterCon.
God damn it, Mike! I swear to God.
He would have won the match if it was an opt.
We'll have to actually watch back the tape because
I just want to be clear about something, even though it has a lot of similar fault points. I like Magical Christmas Land Death so much more than Oath Peluche, and the reason is twofold. One, you don't need double white to do anything in Magical Christmas Land Death, which is like one of the substantial fault points of Oath Peluche. 2, you get Mishra's Factory, but 3, the fact that it has a proactive plan instead of kind of a sit there and your opponent has to cooperate with you plan is very meaningful because you could just like draw a lot of Thermokarsts and Sphere of Resistance, and your opponent might lose to your fail state version of your deck, right? Oath Peluche doesn't really have a gear like that, right? Like you kind of need your stuff to happen versus like, okay, my shitty stuff can happen in Magical Christmas Land Death and I still win.
I
do like that.
Getting Mishra's Factory is just like super awesome. I mean, you become more like. I get why you like it. It like I just think that also, Stone Rain is just so like silly in the Days format. Like,
I mean, I think it's embarrassing, right? Like Days, Gush, and then like I don't understand. I'm like, man, why do you have this card? Like your deck already has like 3 or 4 days main deck.
He just wants to beat it extra hard. Just beat it even harder than he already does.
But what if you were playing that? Good luck.
Yeah.
Response, and I'm just like, YOLO. You can't argue with that.
Yeah. It's just like I've got all 8 Stone Rains covered, and I'm coming for the Rishadan Ports too.
Like so. But it's gas, I don't know. I'm probably gonna play Mono Blue Dreadnought at the brewery $1,000 because of just whatever land does.
I forgot you're already leaking. Yeah, you're actually already leaking. You can't talk about this too much because you're already leaking Land's Edge.
I think I would play personally. The reason I was excited to play Doomsday is because my bias was to play Doomsday at the brewery meetup. These came in the mail this morning. Cards I did not own, but now I own them, including I didn't own a Coffin
Sylvan
Purge.
Safekeeper and Foil Coffin Purge. Judge. My opponent has a marked card.
I have plenty of foils in my deck, so you're gonna have to chase other foils if you want to get me that way, Lanny.
The card foil doesn't count actually, but regardless.
So I had a bias for its. Here's my thought. I like Dreadnought decks the best. If you looked at my tier list, I think Blue White Dreadnought. Fran's deck, Blue White Dreadnought. Let's just run down.
Let's run down what you said your tier list was really quick because people love tier list content.
Yeah, so add land still to that list. I forgot to put on land still.
You put the rock on the list already, Mike. I see it right here. You don't have to add it.
Yeah, it's in last place.
Yeah, yeah. We're good. No changes. I'll read it off for the viewers. Mike Flores.
Put your tier list first, which is
my tier list first. Okay. The full conversation. Full conversation. If you haven't checked out Mike's guest spot on Eternal Durdles podcast, check it out now. He's talking about pre-modern for their audience, which is awesome. Pre-modern, A Miser's Guide. That's up on YouTube. Eternal Durdles. I think they might publish the podcast feeds too. I can't confirm, but I'm sure they do. Somebody was like, "Hey, Mike, I would like to know your tier list for pre-modern." And I was like, Mike's tier list is 12-12, then Burn, then Goblins, then Elves, then Landyhoth, then the rest of the decks. Mike's response was like, my tier list is Blue-White 12-12, Goblins, Elves, Blue-Black 12-12, Burn, Landyhoth, Magical Christmas Land Death, or Red-Green Oath Plush to viewers with taste, and ... and then The Rock, which includes Blue-White The Rock.
Nope, doesn't.
Sorry. Blue White The Rock is like if you like zoom in really close, it's slightly above the rock, like green black.
No, I'm putting it above Magical Christmas Land Death. I forgot about it because you blinded me to my own beloved as a result of being yourself.
Just so bad.
There's no way I'm playing that deck at $1,000 tournament, so maybe I don't have nearly enough faith in it.
I mean, you didn't say like tier 1, tier 2, so at least you can be like, oh, well, that's like the start of tier 2, and then that'd be like a vaguely acceptable whatever.
So I think the tier 1 would be Blue White 12-12, Goblins, Elves, Black Blue 12-12, and Burn. Start at high end of tier 2 is Landyhoth, so the Oath decks in high tier 2. I don't know where I would put Doomsday. Probably high tier 2. Maybe it's tier 1. So here's my thought on Doomsday.
It's not tier 1.
It's not. It can't be tier 1, right?
So, it's not even clearly better than the original version of the deck.
So here's my thoughts on Doomsday. One, I like 12-12 decks the best, but I don't want to be in a situation where I just lose to Magical Christmas, Land Death, or Oath Peluche, or even Thursday's deck, because like those decks thrive on having like high leverage plays in a low mana environment, and that just doesn't fly against Sphere of Resistance. So like if you want to talk about here's my cards, here's my opening 7, here are my cards, here's your opening 7, you're really behind against Sphere of Resistance with keepable hands, right? So like, and then what are you going to mulligan because you have like, okay, I had a 2-land hand, but my opponent might have Sphere of Resistance. This is really bad. And so like, that's a recipe for just never being able to beat someone who might not be as good as you. So I don't like it. Right. So it's just off the island for me. But Doomsday does a really good job of getting around that by playing with Birds of Paradise and Hermit Druid, right? Hermit Druid can activate and kill your opponent for a really low amount of mana if they don't deal with you. And let me tell you, Sutured Gold does not give an F about Terravor. He's going to go straight over Terravor's face. And that's going to be that.
Let's see. How many lands does deck run? Like 20?
Yeah, 20 land, 4 Lotus Petal, 4 Birds of Paradise.
So yeah, your Suture Goal would be a 48 and change. So it'd be like a 50 whatever. If you have some meddling mages in the mix, you can be like a 56. I might be able. because you gave me 20 toughness to my Terravor, I might be able to find the other 15 toughness to block.
So,
Mike, you know the ultimate irony to this?
What?
I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you have Terravors in your deck, you can just exile Terravors to your Sutured Goal to make it like 100s. Yeah. Yeah. And somebody has done this. There is a player who has played Quad Terravor Sutured Goal.
Oh my god, that might be even better. So I was thinking about
Hermit,
but I
Angry
always have
Ghoul,
these ideas.
Peluche.
I always have these ideas, and then I send them to Flint, and then he makes fun of me, and he's just like, "That's terrible." But I'm like, "But it might be great." So I was thinking,
man,
like,
I just want to pause here because I just like, man, you and Flint's relationship. It's just like the like comic book nerd and like the beautiful jock, like bullying him with love. It's like we could just make a 90s movie out of it. It's just like,
yeah. So what if I cut the green and I was just like, but I kept the Doomsday, but then I like added like braids and
God damn it, this is horrible. Just stop talking.
I was just like, I'm black and blue, rock and roll, and I have the other things. They're just a lot slower. They would be with green. Yeah, so that's why I like the Doomsday deck, because it's not just like mono fault point against.
Can you play a mashup of Buried Alive, Sutured Gold combo, Stifle Knot, and Psychotog? Because they're all blue-black decks.
That's the deck I'm describing, but I also have Zombie Infestation.
And then you also have Zombie Squee Braids.
Like,
yeah, okay.
They're the same. Like I'm like Psychotog, Buried Alive for Squee.
I guess we've talked about this deck.
Man.
We've talked about five combos blue-black before, and the only part that we didn't have was Psychotog in the mix. The last time we discussed the possibility.
Last time I tried to make it, Flint just told me it doesn't win fast enough. He says the problem is like if your opponent gives you infinite time, then it's more powerful than all these other decks, but you're just gonna lose to Tormod's Crypt.
I guess it's like
the other
Flint is like also a comic book nerd, but he's just like does a lot more math than his friend. Yeah, he's like a beautiful comic book nerd.
He's a beautiful comic book nerd who can bench press a Buick.
Who can correct? Yeah, who corrects the corrects the classic comic book nerd.
Yeah, so
that's actually still a good 90s movie. It's just like two comic book nerds. They're just as nerdy as each other, except for one is like extraordinarily handsome, so his life is just so much better.
Yeah, so well, to bring this full circle, that's probably not as good of a deck as the Doomsday deck. Here's the thing about Doomsday. Doomsday is exactly on the wavelength of what I was talking about, things that I like versus things that I don't like. Doomsday doesn't care what your opinion is. Like that's the thing. Like, you know, if somebody's just like, all right, Birds of Paradise. Wow. Oath of Druids is a really good straight up answer to Birds of Paradise, right? Like it's a really good straight up answer. Like Hermit Druid, like, well, you kind of have to untap with him and play, and a 1/1 with no haste is about as easy to kill in pre-modern as the thing around. I cast Doomsday. Depending on how much mana I have, you might already be dead. If I have 7 mana, you're dead, right? Or like I just cast Doomsday with 3 mana. I'm like, what do you got? Am I dead? Okay, you're dead, right? Like I have it with Cabal Therapy backup, right? Like it is exactly what you want in life, right? It is that your opponent can interact with it with Swords to Plowshares and not a lot of other ways, right? Direct straight up counterspell is always going to work, you know. If they have a like a direct combo answer like a Tormod's Crypt, that could work. But barring things that are just directly aimed at your combo, just your opponent's opinion just doesn't matter. Their game plan doesn't matter. They're dead. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, I mean, the deck is sweet. It's sweet that I mean, we as we mentioned before, that you went 4-0 and meet up. It's super sick. You got to drop that tournament report in pre-modern for non-idiots, of course.
I kind of don't want to because I would normally, but like like a lot of the tech.
Well, let's
like,
get
doesn't belong to me,
the
and I didn't
handsome
want to give it away.
let's get the handsome comic
Right,
book
so-
nerds permission.
because it's not mine to give away. That's the reason why I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, well, the list is out there. It's
Yeah,
officially
but how to
published.
play it is not out there.
Yeah, how to play it's
And
definitely
it's
not
super
out there.
not obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
No, it's only not. I'm saying get the handsome man's permission to recap your tournament. I mean, I don't know. We'll see if it's tech worth. We'll see if understanding the deck is worth hiding. I always just think it's
it's not mine. I can't. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not mine. Up to me.
Yeah.
Right. Like I benefited from somebody else having it, and
at
but
meetup.
it's not But that's what I play. I mean, I don't know, man. That's just what I play. Like let's say I won 16 consecutive monthlies, right? That's what I did. I won 16 consecutive monthlies and no $1,000 tournaments. Where am I in life that is better than just winning meetups, right? Like it's
Winning one
just
case.
one monthlies. Who cares, right? It's just like I don't care if I care emotionally if I win a meetup because I go to the meetup, I'm excited, I like get to play and compete and stuff. But like winning monthlies and stuff, I don't know how I put this. This doesn't get you anywhere in life. You just got to play pre-modern, which is great.
Yeah, that's
Right, but
that's
you
where it
can
gets
go-
you in life. It's the most
But
important.
you can go 06 in a monthly, and also you got to play pre-modern, right? Like, do you see what I'm saying?
No, I'm saying
What I
I'm
need
just saying
better bragging rights?
I'm just saying the meetup is for the. I mean, I don't know. I guess like the thing that I thought was funny is just like you're just like, man, I really leveraged Flint's technology for a sweet result, and like the result is just like
No, but it's just,
hang time.
dude. I've won a meetup with Red White Astral Slide before. I understand where the bar is.
Yeah. No, it's not. I mean, it's not that. It's mostly just like, the best is yet to come. But I don't know. It sounded to me after discussing that you're locked in on blue green Squirrel Op so that you can crush all of the losers.
Yeah, but I might also play. I don't know, man. Who knows? You know when I decided to play the red deck last time? When you told me that like we would be friends if it depended on if we got matched. I'm like, I'm killing this fucker. Like, that was my reaction was 6 red elemental blasts.
I needed to
My
borrow
answer
the
to that
fourth
answer.
chill. I just needed to. I was looking through my box for the fourth chill. I was like, I don't have 4 chill. Like, how come I didn't order 4
Then
chills when I ordered
tricked
chills?
into going down to 5 red elemental blasts and playing an overload, which almost cost me the tournament.
Yeah.
All right, so
You would have really showed my Mox Diamond with that overload, which I don't know, seems reasonable. You can get around in Armageddon. So we want to talk more about Land's secret deck. It sounds like it's a ton of fun.
I mean, the list is going to get posted on TC Decks. I put it up already.
Oh, nice.
It's not posted yet, but it's going to get posted. It's a Mono Blue Dreadnought with it. The thing that he has different is Cunning Wish in the main deck. Mono Blue Dreadnought with Cunning Wish, and he just has like a bunch of singletons in his sideboard, but he happened to have 4 Teferi's Response.
Nice.
And I do think that Teferi's Response is sick insofar that it will murder people who are on a certain kind of focus. And Land's argument was that there is just no way that those decks can sideboard that makes it so they don't have thermokarsts. Right?
Yeah, that was my argument too. It's like you just can't take those 8 cards out. But it's also hilarious because it's just like, yeah, Daze also counters that card. So like, come on.
That's what I said. I'm like, you already have Daze and Gush. He's like, the decks are an embarrassment. He's like, yeah, but people play them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and B, they can't side these out.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
he wanted to take it to him.
to make sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the Brewery 1K. I mean, I've put all the work into Grotog. I don't know if the work will continue being put into Grotog. We've got 2 weeks to decide. I don't know if I'm going to test or acquire cards for anything. We can same 75 it, but clearly we disagree on everything that matters.
Oh, I know. We both agree on like which decks are good.
Yeah.
I think Grotog's a pretty good deck. I think 12-12 is a very good deck. I think.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be playing
I think-
Grotog because I could beat 12-12 with it. So.
You keep saying that. Have you ever actually done this? Or is
Oh,
this
don't
just
say that. Don't say it. Don't ask. I already
asking.
said that I haven't tried. I will tell you the context in which I beat Blue White Dreadnought with Grotog last. All right.
Yeah.
It's in the pod round of Mike Arnold's band series. Opponent, Blue White Dreadnought with Brainstorm. Nice card, opponent. I am Grotog with Force of Will. Grotog with Force of Will. dumped
So
on.
you beat it like last month then.
Yeah, but I had Force of Will. It was awesome. Like, I can't like people.
Are you gonna play in the? Are you gonna play in the Pauper 1K with me?
I mean, if you hand me like Red Deck or Affinity, I'd be down because it's like on a Saturday.
I was gonna buy Red Deck, Affinity, and like a Terror deck, but I could just buy like 2 Affinity. I don't know, man. Affinity doesn't seem like the kind of deck I want to play.
Yeah, so you can give it to me.
Apparently, it's good. Yeah, I mean, how do you not want to play a Terror deck? It seems like exactly the kind of deck both of us would want to play.
I mean, if you want to buy 2 copies of the Terror deck, like Mental Notes are like $6 each or whatever. So,
oh really?
Yeah,
I thought all these decks cost like 50 cents.
Yeah, so all the decks cost very cheap, except for the ones containing Mental Note, which is like $5, and then Snuff Out, which is like, I don't know, $10 or something.
I have Snuff Outs and Mental Notes from back in the Dizzy.
Oh man. Yeah, you should have told me. I bought a Mental Note I bought it from Bifrost to get over my pay limit, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But I bought a Mental Note from Bifrost. I was just like, I need this card. It's for pre-modern.
So, yeah, I was talking to just getting other people in. BDM was asking me this week about like if there was a viable Nimble Mongoose Werebear deck, right?
We'll make one for him.
Obviously, there is, right? Because there's the green-white not Oath.
That deck is not viable. Nimble Mongoose triggering Oath of Druids is just not a great place to be right now.
Yeah, but I mean, so I was just like, why wouldn't you just play the blue-green version of 12/12, which has the fail state of Nimble Mongoose and Werebear? By the way, Vision Charm myself is Threshold.
Yeah,
right. Like that's 5 cards.
Well, I think
need a lot more help.
I think if I wanted to build, and I've been toying around this, so Mental Note is super good in Threshold decks. Like it's like awesome, and I don't really know if you could get away with Careful Study, and I don't know if you could get away with
Careful Study seems bad.
It's probably really bad. Like getting Threshold quick is amazing, right? So if Nimble Mongoose has Threshold on, like, if you go Nimble Mongoose into what? If you go fetch Nimble Mongoose into fetch Mental Note Bauble, is that Threshold? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So you need another spell. You need one more spell.
Wait, 1 fetch,
2 fetches,
and a mental.
2 fetches.
Oh, 2 fetches is 2, 3, 4. No, it's only 6.
It's 6. Yeah. So you need one more card. But if you can, I don't like Armageddon. I like Fact or Fiction, and I like a backdoor Quiet Speculation. So like the way that I was thinking about it in my head was like Quiet Speculation is good at hitting Threshold. Mental Note is good at hitting Threshold. Like Quiet Speculation and Mental Note like the same cards. And then maybe if you like enough of those cards, you might be able to justify Careful Study in that deck. And then if you have that deck, like if you have Quiet Speculation in your deck and you have Mental Note and Careful Study, Ray of Revelation becomes like really good in multiples. So then you could just be a deck that starts 2 or 3 Ray of Revelation.
What if you were Splash Black instead of Splash White, and you could Intuition for Engineered Plague?
You're like a fatties deck anyway, so you're relatively good against goblins because you can block.
Yeah, but you only have like 7. I guess 12/12s are fatties.
Well, you don't have to play 12/12. 12/12 it takes too much space.
12/12.
Assuming you don't have to play 12/12 just because Stifle is like a little underwhelming on its own, and you don't really want to play. Well, you have to play Portent, and you probably end up playing like you don't. I don't know. When you replace the ops with Mental Notes, 12/12 just starts looking a lot.
I mean, this deck is just such my jam, right? Like you could just play like main deck 1 Genesis. Like you said, Quiet Speculation, maybe Roar of the Worm somewhere in the 75, and you're just like,
yeah, 1 or 2.
The best intuition deck in the room. We're just like Intuition for Quiet Speculations in matchups where the damage doesn't matter. But like Intuition for Genesis, Nimble Mongoose is unbeatable.
Well, I don't like Intuition
unless your opponent
because,
has mana control.
Yeah, I don't like Intuition because it seems kind of slow. I mean, I would play Intuition or Quiet Speculation, obviously, but
I think you want Intuition for deep analysis. Did I say Quiet Speculation? You want Intuition for deep analysis.
I know, but you can Quiet Spec for deep analysis, and it's just 1 mana less.
You could Intuition for other things though. Intuition's a pretty busted card.
I don't know if those things. I don't think those things I mean, they might matter more. They might matter more than the mana, and they might matter less. Because the other thing is like you have to intuition for 2 wonders, which is a little awkward. Because I wouldn't want to play dog or anything.
You don't play like wild mongrel, sure. But look, what if you intuition for anything setting up Genesis? The thing is, like, if your opponent doesn't have mana control, it's really hard to beat Genesis Nimble Mongoose. It's only 4 mana, and you make like a semi-soft lock every turn. That's I think really, really good.
Yeah, I find it compelling. Maybe if you play Careful Study, Frantic Search, and just Graveyard payoffs, that's fine. Maybe you're a good. Maybe you're a good.
I'm hesitant
Factor
to play a
Fiction
deck that's just worse than Cyberpunker's deck.
I agree. I agree,
right,
but
so,
not running Survival of the Fittest is not a bad place to be, and having really consistent access to, Survival Madness has always struck me in that it's like it doesn't really seem like a good aggro control deck. It seems like it's a survival deck that sometimes can cast Mana Leak or Counterspell. I'm probably wrong about that.
Have those cards half the time, right? Like his deck is like wildly different in
composition. Yeah, it changes from day to day. I mean, the most recent one piloted by Selden had I think like a 6-pack of counterspells or something like that, 6 or 8-pack even. But I think when you branch out and you don't have survival, your card advantage engine looks more like Card Speculation or Intuition, and you have you have tools like Ray of Revelation and Swords of Plowshares, then you start. I mean, that's like super good. Like your deck is going to be like so much better against Oath of Druids and
your deck is so good at getting 1 planes. That's really hard to argue.
It has 9 planes, right? Yeah.
I think you should.
And the 9 planes help you hit threshold. I don't know if BDM wants a deck. We should make it for him. I had an even more unhinged version of the deck that was basically just Terrageddon, but instead of running Geddons, it ran Burning Wish.
Yeah, you're right. It is unhinged, but I think that this deck could just easily play Armageddon in the sideboard. Like Werebear Armageddon Threshold seems pretty bonkers to me. Like,
well, yeah, it's good. The problem is the decks that it's good against don't exist anymore, with the exception of Black Green and Blue White Rock. It's not even good against Blue White Rock because they just have counterspell.
Counterspell it. You have no bait spell.
Yeah,
your bait spell is just
Nimble Mongoose. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, Nimble Mongoose. I don't know. You might have to tell BDM that Nimble Mongoose gets blocked by Mishra's Factory, which is a little awkward. You gotta run. I mean, you just gotta run some fair Call the Herds, though. I don't know. There's something there. I've played around with the mix in a deck builder, and the problem is it's just hard to fit it in the 60 and like have.
Okay, do you have permission in this deck somewhere? So the thing that I'm thinking about is if you're just playing like a mid-range creature deck with no disruption and no permission, like at some point you have a terminal win rate against like red deck goblins and the rock. And then you just lose to everything else if you don't have the other stuff. Because like you can't win the game outright inside of 4 turns, right? Like you could have an advantage.
Yeah, I mean,
like, if you don't have a counter spell,
obviously, if BDM came to me and was like, "Hey, is there a deck with like Nimble Mongoose Werebear?" and I'm like, "Can I sell you on Meddling Mage Quirion Dryad?"
No,
it's like I don't know how to explain this to you, but like this is the only deck that does this thing. Like. You simply cannot do it anywhere else.
He's trying to get Centaur Chiefs into the deck when I was talking to him yesterday. He loves Centaur Chiefs.
That's the haste one?
Like, well, it gives Trample also.
Oh, okay.
So he's just like, I'm describing situations to him, and he's just like, well, if this is the problem, I think everybody getting Trample and haste seems like a really, really good way to win the game. And I'm like, well, it's kind of...
Well, why don't you just let him build the deck and just play it? Why
he's just riffing with me, and just like discussing stuff.
No, yeah, I'm just saying.
It's like me and you at the beginning. You're like, I think this.
No, I know, but why don't you just? But instead of, I mean, I don't know, just be like, yeah, obviously follow the trail as far as it goes, but like, let's just get him in, and then.
So yeah, that was a combo I was having yesterday. I like Upheaval. I think it's super underplayed. I think Upheaval
shifting gears back to blue black Tog. Yeah,
it's just like seems like the best. I like the reason I like Upheaval so much is that there's just decks that exist that are like Oath Baluch that just can't stop you from executing your end game. Like that's the thing that's just like really just in my head. I'm like they just
get everything they want in the world, and they can't stop me from executing my end game. Like that, I just don't ever want to be in that situation.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Like
That's what I was saying is the difference.
Well, no, but it's just that's not true of red deck, right? Like you can't execute your end game against red deck. You have to race them. Like that's because they are too busy killing you, right? And versus just infinite setup. Like Enchantress is an even better example. Like my must counter cards in the Enchantress matchup include 1 to 3 Words of Wind. That's it. 1 to 3 Words of Wind, 0 to 2 Replenish. There are 5 must counter cards in their 75. They can literally do everything else they want, and they have a 0% chance of winning the game. That is effed up, man.
Well, the nice part is that they're forcing you to have all 5 answers, before turn 4, which is a little harder.
I mean, they don't. If you're stopping their Words of Wind, they're not executing on turn 4. They're just drawing some cards, right? Like,
well, yeah, they'll find they'll find the second one really quickly. Like they'll find the second one the following turn.
If it's like a game 1 sitch, you might just lead on a duress, take the first one, mana leak the second one. Just like it might be a while before they.
Yeah, it could that situation that you described would be really solid. Although you're not mana leaking the second one because the second one's not getting run out without 3 mana behind. Like, come on.
Fair enough. But the problem is if they don't execute, they're just straight up dead on turn 6, right?
Yeah.
They're just like pick them all up, go, and they're just like,
Well, let's wait for the metagame to be all blue green Enchantress and blue black Psychotog before that happens. I don't know. Bree matup's going to be exciting. We're probably going to see a lot of
you engineered plagued fairy and enchantress or druid, is it human druid?
Yeah.
If you engineered plague druid and fairy, actually, if you just engineered plagued fairy, they have a hard time winning, right? Because they don't build advantages. They actually need to snowball you with Cloud of Fairies rebuys, right?
I mean, they could just put you like the Words of Wind would eventually. Like they can just Words of Wind without Cloud of Fairies and make you pick up the Engineered Plague.
Oh, it just takes a while. Okay, that makes sense.
It doesn't even take a while, right? Because it's just like I'll play an enchantment, 4 triggers, play an enchantment, 4 triggers, Serra Sanctum.
Okay, it sounds to me like my first one should name Enchantresses or whatever.
Yeah, your first one should name Druid. Yeah, that is correct. If you play Engineered, hot tip. Yeah, that's generally how it goes. Love Free Modern. Are we going to change the name of the Facebook group, or are we just going to leave it non-idiots?
So I was thinking about this a lot. Like I was like gung ho to change it, but there were such compelling arguments to keep it as is that made me like really rethink this. BK said 2 things that I loved. One of them was I actually think about whether the thing I'm going to post is idiotic before I hit the return key, which I think the world needs more of. Right, that's amazing to me.
Yeah, that's BK, which is the problem. Like it doesn't solve the issues because the reason idiots say things that are stupid is because they don't have that thing. So it doesn't matter if you have the sign on the door.
The other thing is that Damien, the South American champion, weighed in on the side of keeping it non-idiots. BK weighed in on the side of keeping non-idiots. I think Zach Hill. They're all like gatekeeping is fine if it focuses the topic, right? You just want to keep the topic to be focused. And so that just gave me a lot of different stuff to think about because I was gung ho on changing it until
I think it's
change it in the future maybe still.
I think it's basically doesn't like you wouldn't be able you kind of just have 2 competing things, which is just like as the group grows it is going to have less focused discussion period and that's just like group dynamics and like what's going to happen. I think that the name is basically immaterial to that. Like, people are out on the internet. They kind of want to share things that they want to talk about, and some percentage of the people simply don't think very hard before sharing what they want to say, and most of the time, that's fine and whatever. And like I said, I don't really know if you can fix this with policy, basically.
Oh well, I guess the answer is who knows. That's the correct answer.
Good answer.
What do we? We're at over 2 hours at this point.
Yeah, we crested
2:15.
Yeah, we crested into 2:17 on the record. It'll probably be a little short on the pod. I haven't even released our last week's pod, so maybe I'll try to release that today and then release this one on Wednesday or something. So that's.
I will ask you to close. I will ask you the gating question of Pre-Modern for Non-Idiots. What is your favorite Pre-Modern deck, Lanny?
My favorite Pre-Modern deck is Grotog. What's your favorite Pre-Modern deck, Michael J?
Mono red.
All right. Well,
Burn, Sly, whatever you want to call it. Fuck it, we ball.
Shock and all, flying through the audience. Waves of shock and all, going through the audience. Be sure to check out the tournaments. Mike,
what if we same 75 Grotog? I'll play Grotog.
Oh well, then it's a hook. Then I'm just like, if you offer that to me, I'm taking it.
But I'm not. But the thing is, what if I'm not good at it? That's the thing. Like you mulligan in spots that I wouldn't necessarily know to mulligan.
It's not a very mulligan heavy deck, except for specifically when you can't win against Burn.
But I never mulligan. That's the thing that like people don't know about me. If I have like a land, like I don't mulligan usually.
Yeah, the deck with 12 1-mana cantrips is like pretty good at keeping most hands though.
Yeah.
Like it's actually not that hard to mulligan with the deck, because a lot of people are just like, oh, you have to mulligan if you don't have like a Dryad in your opening hand. I'm just like, no, if you have a Portent in your hand, you have a Dryad. Like, the difference between a deck with 12 cantrips, 8 cantrips, and 4 cantrips is massive, right? You'll find the thing that you need. Don't worry about it. Land Portent, you'll just let the rest work itself out.
The deck doesn't have Impulse, right?
Impulse is a little too high on the curve.
Why do you not play Brain Freeze in this deck? Just Armageddon takes the Brain Freeze spot.
Yeah, Armageddon does the Brain Freeze spot, and it's not like this deck, like Magical Christmas Land Brain Freeze turn is like, probably like Double Gush, Mox Diamonds, and cantrips. It's just not that compelling. You probably would need to. You can't really play. I don't know. I guess. I'll actually just simplify it down to just like I don't have the sideboard space.
All right.
Like I can't even fit the fourth chill and all the plows.
Tell you what, if I own 4 Kyrian Dryads, which I believe I do, I'll assemble it at a minimum for next week's Queens meetup. If I win that one, you know what my likelihood is of playing it at the big tournament after winning.
Yeah, love to see it. And the best part is that people can't even like counterpick against us if we like fully announce the deck and the 75.
Well, red deck doesn't beat it anymore.
Because no decks beat Grotog. Let's go.
Yeah, so I was trying to explain this to Caffeinated, and he's just like, why don't you just counterpick with red deck like you've been doing it? Because it just literally doesn't win anymore. Lanny built DNA into his deck to beat me on my counterpick. Like, here's all the things that are wrong with this. You have to gear 1. He's like, no, you do this and this like we've been doing. I'm like, no, motherfucker has chill and fire ice. Then he Armageddons you. Didn't used to have Armageddon. Right? Yeah. Like when you didn't have all these cards, like I could just win with a curse scroll.
I mean, it's still super loose. You still have to mulligan into chill, like mulligan until you have chill in your opening hand, and you have to fade the blast. So like, yeah, once you fade the blast, then you're super good. So like, 2 mana sources of chill in a daze is a lot to ask if you're on the play. If you're on the draw, then you need like chill days. Like
you mulled to 5 in our deciding game. My 7 was perfect. Like I had a perfect 7-card hand, and I almost lost.
You would have lost if there was a land within the top 2 cards of my deck. That's how. Yeah, that's my hand. That's what I'm saying. Like for the listeners, Mike opens up his hand. He's just like, this hand is amazing. There's no way you're winning this. This hand is amazing because
which was true.
It was a triple. It was like a triple 1-drop hand, right?
Yeah, a triple 1-drop hand with like 2 lightning bolts, like just
good. Just something super crazy. Maybe it was 2 1-drops and a lightning bolt. It was just nuts. So I open up my first hand and it's like a 0 lander. And then I opened my second hand. So I was showing Mike the hands I was shipping. I was like, I opened my first hand. It's like a 0 laner. I opened my second hand. There's like 3 Mox Diamonds and a City of Brass in it. So I like show my hand to Mike and I show him one card at a time. I like show him the City of Brass and he's like, oh, you got to ship it. And I showed him the Mox Diamond. He's like, oh, you're good. And then I showed him another Mox Diamond. He's like, oh, you got to ship it. I showed him another Mox Diamond. He's like, yeah, that's a mulligan. Then I open up my 5 and my 5 is 1 land, 2 cards that I'm going to bottom, Opt, Chill, Daze. So it's land, Mox, Opt, Chill, Daze. Those are the 5 cards. So I have a turn 2 Chill with Daze backup. If there's an island in the top 2 cards of my deck, and there just wasn't an island in the top 2 cards of my deck, I had to just like wait a little longer, play a little bit more control until I finally had Chill.
But
then I had
took like 6 damage.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like
I took like 12 damage.
Yeah. So then he goes like Chill and has Fire Ice also, right? So he found Fire Ice going into the mid game. So but I knew he had Armageddon, and I was just like, there's just no way he can get to Armageddon because he didn't even have land in the off the opening opt.
Yeah.
Right. So then when he Geddens me in the mid game, but the Chill makes it so I can't even Fire Blast him in response to the Geddon.
Yeah.
So it's just like so bad, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't lose this game.
But Mike has a Jackal Pup in play, so I'm trying to find a blocker for the Jackal Pup, and I get down to one life before I can block with a Quirion Dryad or whatever. And you draw Barbarian Ring. The Barbarian Ring gets under Chill pretty good. So that was a sweet game, and yeah, I think that if I had an extra copy of Chill to mulligan towards, things would be a lot different. So I'm looking forward to asking you to give me a Chill. And then we can same 75 it.
I think I have at least 5 Chills.
Yeah, make sure you pull 5 out of the box. Probably look out for us taking over the world with Grotog.
I have how many of these do I need?
You need 2. You could conceivably play 3, but you only need 2.
I have 5 foils. I have 5
I can't fit the
Obstercom stamped ones.
That's awesome. You can fit like. I've been trying to fit the 3rd in the deck. And then I've also been trying to fit an extra sideboard card. So I might go from 17 to 16 lands. Like that's my latest technology.
Right, so I'm thinking, I think I own 4 Quirion. When I say I know, I'm pretty sure I own 4 Quirion Dryads, but I'm highly biased that my Quirion Dryads are new border.
10th edition. Let's go.
Yeah, I think I have only new border Quirion Dryads. I'd have to look.
Look, that rules. I'm down. I'm down for a new border.
But I've only ever played Quirion Dryad in I think one tournament, but I won $1,000 extended tournament with it in 2001. So I'm down with Quirion.
Well, they're blessed. They're blessed cards.
Yeah. So.
So excited to see you at the next pre-modern situation. Catch me playing online. Catch Mike in New York. Catch us in New York. Endless Life Brewing. The event is capped, but if you are in the area and want to know about the next one, stay tuned to Sunny on social media. And I'm sure he announces on like Facebook and stuff too for the next one. And if you're in the area, go ahead and you can join us on Discord. Check out all the monthly action, which is turning into weekly action. And be sure to check out on the 17th. Mike, are you free a week from today? Do you want to commentate the Magic Online Challenge?
Yeah, I think.
Sounds awesome, right? Okay.
Think so.
Try to book it. That's going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern on February 17th. Just make sure to clear your calendars for that because that event is going to be awesome. Congrats to Gary for winning the monthly. Super cool stuff. Savannah Lions, Rain, getting in there. The monthlies are just looking sharper and sharper. Lots of great players, lots of great decks. Players online are super sharp. We love to see the spikes getting pointier, and we love you. Love Spike Colony.
Love Mike. All right, bye.
Game over.